Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto leave Konoha after being beaten and meet with one of the three powerful person of Kumo. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Konoha is a very pretty place, especially at night. The entire city is surrounded by tall oak trees created by the founder, Hashirama Senju, or the Shodai Hokage with the Mokuton, giving the village the name Konohagakure. This village had produced great and powerful shinobi, from the powerful Sannin to the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. However, the most famous of all of the heroes of Konoha is none other than the Konoha no Kiro Senko, or the Yondaime Hokage, a man who had single-handedly destroyed armies of invading shinobi in seconds during the Third Shinobi World War. But his greatest accomplishment was one that cost him his own life. The defeat of the Kyuubi no Yoko on October 10th. While many know it as fact that the Kyuubi was defeated by the Yondaime, few know that to defeat the demon fox, he had to use the Shiki Fuin, a seal which by using the powers of the Shinigami himself to seal away another for eternity. On that fateful night, the Yondaime not only sealed half of the beast inside himself, but also the other half into the newborn baby, Naruto. The Yondaime knew that the Shinigami could only seal half of the demonic being, so with his last breath, he sealed the rest of the beast's yang chakra into the boy. His wish was for the boy to be seen as a hero and as his legacy to stand for all the people that gave their lives on that fateful day. This brings us to the present, 6 years after the Kyuubi attack, where a young boy with spiky blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and 3 whisker marks on each cheek was running for his life from an angry mob of villagers. Needless to say, the fourth's wish had gone unheeded as many of the villagers and ninja pleaded for the boy's execution, believing that he was the Kyuubi in human form. The only thing that had kept them at bay was the reinstated Sandaime Hokage, who soon after the boy's status was released, issued a law stating that those who were old enough to remember the Kyuubi attack were never to speak of it on penalty of death. While this stopped the populace from outright demanding the child's death, they soon found ways of going around the rule by blacklisting him from shops and restaurants, forbidding their children from socializing with him, and the weekly beating that with the help of the civilian court went mostly unpunished. In Naruto's opinion, October 10th, his birthday, was the worst of all the days in the year combined. The day of the festival was the day the Anbu were too preoccupied to watch over him, and for some reason the villagers' hate was higher than normal. These were the days he was normally sent to the hospital for more than a week. Why? Thought the abused child as he ran down an alley with a mob close behind him. There he is. Screamed a woman with pink hair, time to finish what our beloved Hokage started. She raised her fist causing the crowd to yell in approval. No, I can't get caught again, thought the blonde as he took another left, quickly realizing that it was a dead end. Shit. The crowd circled around him with knives, rocks, anything that could do damage and began their assault. Naruto, long ago, had come up with ways to cope with the pain of being hated for something he did not even know by smiling, playing pranks, and basically putting on the mask of the baka, but tonight, the pain felt especially worse, and as he looked up to the faces of his attackers, he was able to push out the words, "Why do you hate me? Because you're a demon, that's why." Yelled one of the villagers with unmasked hatred, "You are the reason my daughter's dead. But now I am finally going to get revenge." The man then took out a large kitchen knife and stabbed it through Naruto's chest as the crowd cheered in approval. As Naruto felt the warm liquid fall down his body, he collapsed and was about to ask again when he felt a heat coming at his back. He looked but was too late as a medium-sized fireball engulfed him in red embers. Naruto's screams of pain only seemed to excite the villagers as they cheered on the Chunin, who had fired off a Gakakyo no Justu at the defenseless child. Naruto could feel that he was in a lot more pain than normal. From what he could tell, he had a broken arm, a punctured lung, and a couple of broken ribs, not to mention the first and second degree burns he had all over his body. With bloody tears in his eyes, he slowly drifted to unconsciousness. As a villager tried to deliver a finishing blow, the pink-haired leader stopped him. "No, we can't kill him, even though he deserves to die. We can't be assumed as the killers. It has to die on its own." She looked down at the bloody heap of the demon before pointing at two Chunin. "You two take the child away from the village and leave him. Then remove any trace you have on you of this deed and return." The two ninja nodded before grabbing the child and leaving in a puff of smoke. The woman then turned to the rest of the mob. "The rest of you return to your homes and rejoice. Tonight we celebrate the true death of the Kyuubi." Bored. These were the thoughts of a young man walking through the land of Hai no Kuni. The man was around 6'1" in his late 20s. He had toned skin with wild uncombed brown hair. His face was jagged with stubble, and his eyes were a dull hazel. His attire was composed of a pair of standard shinobi pants with a matching jonin vest, tan boots, fingerless gloves with metal guards, and to top it all off, a red and white coat with the kanji for fox on the back. This man was Racky Sameu, member of the Kumo no Sansoku. Why did I have to walk through high no Huni to get to you? I could have easily just taken a ferry from Taki. I could have stayed another night and found some entertainment, complained Racky as he trudged through the unending sea of trees. He looked up at the night sky. Well, at least it is a nice night, he thought with a smile. He had always loved nature, even before he became a ninja. He took in the smells of the forest. He loved the smell of the bark, the dew, the flowers, he paused, dried blood. Instantly he was on the alert. Highly trained calculative eyes darted from left to right as he surveyed his surroundings. Well, he pinpointed the smell's location. As soon as he had located the source of the smell, he moved silently over to the clearing, but what he saw caused his eyes to widen in horror and shock. Before him was a boy no older than 5 or 6, crucified to 2 pieces of wood with dried blood and burns covering his skin. The boy's hair was a dirty blonde which had bits and pieces burned off, while his clothes were nothing but shreds of burned cloth. But the most defined feature was the 3 whisker marks on his cheeks. Tommy, what the hell happened here? As he rushed towards the unconscious boy. Without wasting a moment's hesitation, he removed the boy from the cross and began to work. You could never really be a good ninja if you did not know how to heal yourself. As Racky examined the boy, he felt that something was wrong. From the damage it looks like this boy took, it should be a lot worse, he shouldn't even be alive. Racky scowled at the thought of what had happened to this child and decided that it would be beneficial to take the kid away from the area. After all, waking up in a place surrounded by your own blood is not a pleasant experience. To throw off any trackers, Racky placed some false tracks, looking as if wild animals found him and used him as a welcome snack. If this is any indication, doesn't look like the boy is very wanted where he is from. It would be better if they thought he was dead. Thought Racky as he finished the false tracks. He then picked up the boy and jumped into the trees. Racky was confused for the umpteenth time that night as he looked at the bandaged sleeping child by the fire. When Racky had arrived at his present location, from his examination the boy had second-degree burns all over his skin, a couple of broken ribs and a shattered foot. Now 2 hours after, the burns had all but subsided, his ribs were completely repaired and his foot was slowly healing itself. Even the boy's hair had grown back to replace the burned spots, and all Racky had done was clean and bandage the wounds. This all screamed one word through the young man's mind, Jinchuriki. That would explain the beating and why it had happened, but the question was which one. From intel he knew the Taki had one, but they were too far away, the 2 in Kiri were much older, and the Ichibi Jinchuriki would not let others even touch his container. Racky looked at the boy once again, hoping that he could get even the slightest piece of information. But sadly, he was at a loss. He looked up at the night sky for a moment before unsealing some fish he had caught earlier that day. Well, sighed Racky as he prepared the fish, he probably won't want to talk on an empty stomach. The first thing that awoke Naruto was the smell of something delicious. He creaked open his eyes and was surprised to find he was not in the normal hospital room he would normally wake up to after a beating. While surveying the area, his eyes soon passed over a young man wearing a red and white coat, leaning over a small campfire. This only served to scare Naruto even more. Where was Jiji? What had happened? Was he in the village anymore? What was that heavenly smell? It was at that moment the man looked straight into Naruto's eyes. They did not have the hatred that most eyes of the villagers had, they had a warm glow that seemed to show kindness and warmth, more like Jiji's or the Ichiraku's. That said man then picked up a cooked fish and tried to give it to Naruto. You know it would be easier to heal if you had something in your stomach, he said with a smile. Naruto did nothing but stare at the fish, causing the man to pout. Come on, it won't kill you. Look, he then proceeded to take a bite out of said fish. Gathering his courage, Naruto slowly reached out and grabbed the fish. He took a deep breath and then took a huge bite. Well, if it is poisoned, I might as well not die hungry too. His eyes widened after the first bite and he screamed, "This is great," and proceeded to devour the fish. Racky chuckled at the boy's hunger, watching as he ate like he hadn't in weeks. Probably hasn't spoke a voice in his head which caused him to frown. When the boy had finished eating 3 fish, he finally looked at the man and said, "Ah no, but who are you?" Racky smirked and said, "Samei Racky," with a hint of pride, "and who might you be?" The boy gave him a fox-like grin and said, "Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha and future ninja." The boy's last name caused Racky's eyes to widen, Uzumaki. Could this kid be related to the Akai Chishio no Habanero? He had had the unpleasant privilege of meeting the woman in battle. She was with no doubt a powerful shinobi and had sent him home with a broken arm. Something not very common when you are considered to be one of the top ninja in the village. He took the time to examine the boy again. Well, the boy's supposed mother had been a red-haired fair-skinned woman, this boy looked nothing like her in the sorts. The boy had tan skin, blonde hair, and bright blue eyes. This caused Racky's eyebrow to rise. There were not that many people with blue eyes in this world, the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed person that he knew of that had come out of Konoha was the Yondaime Hokage. How could he have not seen it before? This boy was basically a chibi version of him. If the habanero and the Konoha no Kiro Senko had had a child, he would be the most powerful ninja in the world. Also with his Jinchuriki status, no man in his right mind would want to mess with him. But this raised another question, if he was the son of the so-called hero of Konoha, then why was he hated? Obviously the Yondaime had kept his child's birth a secret, if Iowa had known they would have sent an entire army to kill the kid. This means that the hatred of the kid had to be because of his Jinchuriki status, with the only biju for Konoha to ever hold, the Kuibi no Yoko. Racky-san, Racky-san, Racky-san. Screamed Naruto as he had watched a man stare into space for close to a minute, which for him was almost an eternity. Shaken out of his stupor, Racky replied. He then gave a sheepish grin and said, sorry, must have been thinking too hard. Naruto gave him a mock glare, then looked around and asked, where am I and how did I get here? Racky adopted a sad look while he poked the fire with a stick. I found you out here, beaten to a pulp, then crucified to a stake. Naruto looked down to his feet with a shadow over his eye. Oh, he shakily replied. Racky knew that he should not ask, but he had to know. Does this happen a lot? It was silent for a few moments before he said in a quiet voice, yes, but I am getting used to it. This caused Racky to subconsciously grit his teeth and ball his fists. No child should get used to being hated and hurt. Don't you have a guardian or something to watch over you? Said Racky, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. Naruto just shook his head. No, I know that Hokage Jiji and the Ichirokas care for me, but there is little that they can do with Jiji in the office and Ichirokas in business. The Anbu Jiji has that watch me sometimes help, but they only come to stop the fatal attacks, then leave. Racky was boiling with rage. No one, especially a child, should have to deal with this. He was prepared to go to Konoha right now and massacre the entire populace. But the worst part is Racky stopped his planning on killing everyone in Konoha to look at the boy, and when he saw his tears, all the rage dissipated. I don't even know why, said Naruto as tears began to fall down his face. They blame me for killing people I don't remember, doing things that I don't know. They blame me and call me a demon for things I wish I knew. If I did know I would apologize, but when I asked Jiji, he would avoid the question, and when I asked the mob, they just call me a demon and hit me harder. Racky looked at the almost broken child in front of him. A child who had seen things that others' nightmares could not hold a candle to. He knew he had to help, he would not let this kid go back to that. He gained an impassive look on his face and spoke in a smooth, soft voice, do you want to know why? Immediately Naruto's head was up with a look of shock on his face. Why you know, and you'll tell me? Said Naruto, the tears beginning to fall again. Racky nodded his head, only if you want to know. Naruto pondered the question for a long minute before nodding for Racky to continue. What do you know about the Kyuubi? Asked Racky. Not much other than it was killed by the Yondaime, said Naruto as he tilted his head in confusion. Racky shook his head, no one can kill a tailed beast, Naruto, since they are just large masses of chakra and no one can kill chakra. The only way to defeat a biju is to seal it. Naruto's eyes widened in realization as Racky continued, the Yondaime used a special sealing technique to seal away the Kyuubi into a living vessel, a vessel whose chakra pathways are still developing, in other words. Naruto stuttered, but then looked down and said with a broken voice, I guess I really am a demon, only to be slapped upside the head by Racky. Never say that again, said Racky with a steel gaze. I may not have known you for a long time, but from what I can see, you are not a giant bloodthirsty chakra beast. You are Uzumaki Naruto, a young boy who has been hated for absolutely no good reason. Naruto stared at Racky for what seemed like hours before a small genuine smile, one which not even Jiji or the Ichirokas had seen, appeared on his face. Thank you, he said, before tackling Racky into a hug. He was surprised at first when the kid had hugged him, but he soon shook it off and hugged him back. Now, said Racky as he put Naruto back down and patted the dirt off his coat. I am going to make you a once-in-a-lifetime offer, Kid. Racky said with a grin, how would you like to be a ninja? Naruto's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. All his life he had wanted to be a ninja, to gain the respect and love of the village. But if I go and train with Racky-san, I won't be a ninja for Konoha, thought Naruto, which caused him to frown. But would he really want to be in charge of protecting the people who hurt him? Even if he would put everything on the line to save Jiji or the Ichirokas, would he do it to save the rest of the villagers? Naruto thought of what Jiji would tell him if he was also here. The words, do what will make you happy, came to mind, and he would surely be a lot happier training to be a ninja away from all of the hatred. Naruto closed his eyes before opening with a new determined look. Hi, I will go with you, Racky-sensei. Mama, said Racky, putting his hands up in defense. I'm not all for that respect stuff, kid. Racky will just be fine. Hi, Racky, said Naruto as he gave his new teacher a fox grin. Racky smiled at this, the look to the stars. Well, kid, you better get some rest. Tomorrow we leave this forsaken land and start your path to becoming one kick-ass shinobi of Kumo. Naruto nodded before moving back to the sleeping bag, falling asleep almost instantly. Racky smiled at the sleeping kid before moving his gaze towards Konoha. The day marks the day that Konohagakure fell as the strongest of the elemental nation. You will soon know the great treasure you have lost when your shinobi cringe in fear when the name Naruto is spoken. Remember this day Konoha, for this is the day that Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto began his rise towards greatness. It had been 2 days since the festival and Hiruzen Starobi, Sandaime of Konoha, was in his office filling out a seemingly endless pile of paperwork. Why do I need to sign off about what kind of dog food the Inuzuka clan feeds their dogs with? But this was not the reason he was upset. He had not been able to go see Naruto for his birthday, he had even gotten him an orange jacket as a gift. He was not worried about the boy, Naruto had made him a promise that he would not leave his apartment all day for his birthday, because he knew that was when the villagers were at their worst. Sarutobi frowned at the mention of the villagers, they had never liked the boy and along with the civilian council, had tried to make Naruto's life a living hell. Sarutobi still remembered the rage he felt when he found out that Naruto had been kicked out of the orphanage and had been living on the street for a year. The Shinobi Council was mixed on the subject of Naruto, while the Inuzuka, Akimichi, Nara, Aburame, and Yamanaka clan tried on many occasions to make Naruto's life a bit better, even Tsume tried to adopt him, the elders, Hamura Mitokado and Kaharu Utatane, along with help from the Hyuga Uchiha and the civilian council stopped them and tried to place Naruto under execution for false charges. Danzo seemed to have his own agenda, always throwing in the idea of Naruto being used as a weapon for Konoha, or in reality, a weapon for Danzo. Hiruzen scowled, the day that he gets Naruto is the day that Kakashi and Jiraiya give up porn. Deciding that his work was done for the day, Hiruzen walked out of his office to go visit his favorite blonde adopted grandson. As Sarutobi walked through the streets he got nods of respect, which he politely returned, smiling and waving at the children who walked by. As he neared Naruto's apartment, he spied the new graffiti of "Died Demon" and other messages painted on the wall. Hiruzen sighed and continued to walk up the stairs of the apartment complex, mentally filling to place a D-rank mission to clean up the mess. As he opened the door to the Naruto's apartment, he found that it was unlocked, not surprising, because Naruto never locked his door. He peered around the room and found that no one was here. He sighed, Naruto must be off doing one of his pranks. The room itself was quite small, the paint was peeling off, and the floor was covered with dirty clothes. His eyes stopped when he looked on the table, before slowly widening with horror. On the table was a knocked-over cup of cooked ramen. This was bad, Naruto and uneaten ramen were two things that would never be together unless something truly horrible had happened. Sarutobi's mind instantly went into gear as he searched for any type of trail, when he found one leading out of the apartment he was off. He followed the tracks down the twists and turns of the alleyways until a familiar stench reached his nose, the stench of blood. As Hiruzen turned the corner, he was greeted with the sight of an alleyway completely covered in dry blood. He quickly surveyed the site, finding lots of ash under a dumpster near the scene. Was a Kaiten just used on Naruto? He then found some barely visible tracks of Naruto leaving the area. So some of my own shinobi were a part of this. They must have been chunin from how well they covered the tracks. But they did not suspect I myself would be following the trail. Sarutobi pulsed his chakra and 3 Anbu quickly appeared by his side. What do you need? Hokage-sama said, one with a Nico mask. Nico, come with me to follow these tracks, Yuma and Taka, go find a medic, I think we will be needing one. Said the Hokage before jumping off in the direction of the tracks with Nico close behind. Please be alright, Naruto-kun prayed Hiruzen as he jumped through the trees. After about 2 hours of tracking, the Hokage and his guard reached a handmade cross with dry blood on it. Hiruzen paled, the blood looked to be a couple of days old, while the ropes looked as if they had been ripped off by a wild animal. The animal tracks then proceeded to go deeper into the forest to devour its prey. Hokage-sama, Nico said, these tracks are a couple of days old, even if Naruto-san could have survived, and he would have been dead by now. I am truly sorry. Hiruzen looked down to the ground with a grievous look before saying, that is fine Nico, when we return to the village, I want you to gather Yuhi Kurenai, Hada Kakashi, and Mido Gai, and tell them to come to my office. Nico nodded before the team of 2 started their long trip back to the village. Naruto thought Hiruzen, I have not only failed you, but your father as well. This was odd, thought Kakashi as he pondered the Hokage's reasons for having him come to his office. It could not be a mission because he himself had ordered Kakashi to take a break. After Minato-sensei and his child had died, Kakashi had thrown himself completely into his own work to stop the painful tug of loneliness from returning. Kakashi had been one of the few besides the Sandaime and Jiraiya to know of the child's birth. He had had so many dreams of watching over the child like his sensei had after Kakashi's own father had killed himself. He did however follow his late teacher's final words to treat the boy with respect, even if it was hard for him to watch over the boy due to his continuous Anbu missions, had even protected the child from drunks and mobs before he could get hurt. As he entered the Hokage's waiting room, he spotted Mido Gai, his eternal rival, and Yuhi Kurenai, a seasoned chunin. both along with Sarutobi Asuma, who was currently part of the Shogunin Jinishi, had been part of Team Uzumaki under Kushina Uzumaki. Both her and Minato's teams had begun to train and do missions together when Minato and Kushina had started their secret relationship. Kurenai had often teased that Minato had a thing for Kushina, which everyone had quickly disregarded. That was until they caught them making out at the training grounds. After looking around, he nodded a hello, then pulled out his famous Icha Icha and, much to Kurenai's ire, began to giggle pervishly. However, his fun was short-lived when the secretary appeared, informing them that the Hokage would see them now. When they entered the office, they were shocked to find that the normal Nin no Kami, whose power was known throughout the 5 nations, was replaced with a sad and tired-looking old man. I was the first to regain his composure and responded in his usual tone, "Greetings Hokage-sama, what youthful task do you have for me and my youthful comrades?" The Hokage shut his eyes for a moment before opening them and responding, "Guy, there is no task you must be doing or will do. I have asked you here to talk to you three of a matter of great importance." Kakashi raised his only visible eyebrow at this before asking, "How great of importance?" "SS rank," spoke the aged Kage curtly. The 3 shinobi instantly stiffened up as Guy adopted his serious face, and Kakashi put away his precious Icha Icha. The Hokage nodded before sending his Anbu out of the office and activating a silencing seal. He then began to say, "Now I must start with saying that I have not been completely truthful to you these past years." The Kage as he stood up from his chair, turning to look out the window. 6 years ago when you asked if the child of Uzumaki Kushina and Minato Namikaze survived, I admit I lied to you about his death." The 2 Jonin and 1 Chunin's eyes widened. "Sensei's son survived," thought Kakashi with a mix of happiness and regret. Happiness for having the chance to repay his teacher, while regret for not being able to help the child earlier. "Ah no Hokage-sama," said Kurenai, who was still in a state of shock upon the revelation, "but who is the child?" Hiruzen gave her a somber smile. "His name was Uzumaki Naruto, but you might know him better by what the villagers call him, the demon of Konoha." Kakashi's eyes widened even more before he narrowed them in anger. He had seen the child on a regular basis and could have been able to help him. The horrors he had seen Naruto suffer were the things that he had envisioned protecting him from, and he had done nothing. Kakashi looked around the room to see how his friends were handling the news. Guy, who normally wore a seemingly too bright smile on his face, was distorted into a mask of pure rage. His hands were fists just itching to pulverize the men responsible for what Naruto had gone through. Kurenai, who normally kept her emotions under control in the workplace, was on the curb of having a breakdown. She had been closer to Kushina than anyone and had seen her as more of a mother figure. The thought of not being able to help the woman she admired most child was agonizing. Then it clicked in Kakashi's head. He spoke with barely controlled rage. The old Kage nodded sadly. "From what we can tell, Naruto was taken out of his home during the festival, beaten to a near-death state, which not only was the work of normal weapons, but also Kaiten justice, was then removed from the village and crucified for 2 days, where he most likely died and was taken away by some animal to eat. That did it." In seconds Kurenai was on the ground sobbing, mumbling about how she had failed her teacher. Guy went to comfort her, but one could see the tears dripping down his face. Kakashi just stood still in a state of shock after finding out the way to repay his sensei, for his kindness was gone. A lone tear drifted down his unmasked eye. "I am sorry to tell you this," said the Hokage regaining their attention, "but it is obvious that some of our own shinobi were a part of this. Therefore we must make an example of this to anyone who tries to betray the leaf. You 3 will go discover who is responsible for this and make them pay dearly in front of the entire village." Kakashi, Kurenai, and Guy all steeled their gaze, intent on bringing absolute hell to the men who had done this. "Make it gruesome," said the Hokage in a dark voice. "One must know the consequences of disobeying me, the Hokage, and their village." "You are dismissed." The 3 were gone in an instant, trying to be the first to find the murderers so they could have first crack at them. It had been almost a week since he had left Konoha and Naruto felt great. As soon as they arrived in U, they had entered a department store and after a long and tiring debate on whether or not orange was a proper color for a shinobi, had decided on a wardrobe. Naruto had chosen to go with a pair of black baggy pants, a dark orange muscle shirt with 2 shinobi-style boots. Racky could not completely make him give up his favorite color. When they went to counter, Naruto was a bit frightened. Who wouldn't be when for your entire life, anytime you had tried to buy some food or clothes, you would be chased out with a broom? Naruto looked up at his mentor who sent back a small smile before pushing the kid towards the desk. Gathering his courage, Naruto, in his new clothes, walked up to the cashier and said, "I would like to buy these clothes." Cashier and the woman looked down at the small blonde in front of her before her eyes widened like dinner plates. In seconds she was around the table and glumping the poor child while screaming, "Kawaii." As soon as Naruto realized what was happening to him, felt the 2 mounds pressed up against his cheeks and began to blush. This only made the girl squeeze harder at how adorable it was. Racky, who had been watching with an agape jaw, soon realized he had hit the goldmine of woman attractors. He smiled deviously as he thought of all the plans he would have in store for his young apprentice. 20 minutes later, after the woman had finally released Naruto when he was about to go unconscious from lack of air, they were paying for their purchases with a large discount. Racky and his student then went to a poke stand and sat down on a bench, watching the families and traders' daily routine. "Nah, Racky," Naruto asked, turning his whole body towards his sensei, "what exactly are you going to be teaching me?" Racky looked at the boys as he pondered his question, slowly chewing on his poke. "What do you think it is like to be a shinobi?" he asked finally, returning his gaze to the crowd. Naruto was surprised but chose not to speak as his teacher continued. "A shinobi's life is full of death, danger and murder. We cannot avoid it, only learn to live with it." Racky spread his arms as to show the crowds of people in the square. "We kill on a daily basis. I myself have killed hundreds of men and women, and my sensei even more than that." Naruto paled as he thought of all the blood. "We kill, we must accept that," said Racky, still looking into the crowd, "but we must also find a reason to do what we do. Something to help get us through the night. For some it is money, others family, but trust me kid, you will not survive long in this line of work if you cannot come up with an answer. So I ask you," Racky turned to face Naruto, "why do you want to be a shinobi?" Naruto was at a loss. Before, he would have quickly said to gain everyone's love and respect, but that was not the answer he wanted. Living the life he had, you learn very quickly that it takes a lot of work to create true bonds. But when the bonds are built, they are not easily broken. This was the reason that Naruto had always treasured his relationship with Jiji, the Ichiricus and now, Racky. Those people were more precious than any currency and Naruto would put his life on the line. It was then Naruto had his answer. He took a deep breath, "I want to protect my precious people." Racky just continued to stare at him, non-verbally telling him to continue. "I know I don't have many right now," said Naruto as he looked up to the clear blue sky, "but someday I will, and I need to be strong enough to protect them at all costs." Racky smiled at his student's words, "Nice kid, really nice. Well you aren't going to get that strong sitting on your ass," said Racky as he stood up, "time to start you on that path of yours kid." Naruto gave Racky a grin, which he quickly mirrored as they set off to the canyon of the town. The outskirts of the village were very rocky and steep, but on the plateaus were wide, open green fields. Perfect for the training use of ninja, whose workout sessions would normally destroy the land around them. In the center of one of these plains was Racky, facing a giddy Naruto. "This is it," thought Naruto, as he bit his tongue to keep from yelling in joy. "This is the day I become a Kikis ninja. So what are we going to do? Maybe we start off with some high-powered justice. Maybe one that can turn a mountain to rubble, man that would be Sugo. Maybe a kumile per hour." Naruto was silenced when Racky cupped his hand over the boy's mouth. "Geez kid, why don't you just talk your enemies to death, that might work," said Racky as he rolled his eyes. "Was I like this when a sensei taught us?" He grimaced at the thought. "Do you even know what chakra is?" Racky asked as he removed his hand from Naruto's mouth. "Chakra?" Naruto tilted his head in confusion, "No idea what you're talking about." Racky sighed, "This is going to be a long day, no baka, chakra, in all essence, it is the source of Ajustu's power. It is basically the combination of physical energy, which is in every living thing, and spiritual energy, which is the combination of a person's experience and training. In other words, no chakra, no jutsu." Racky looked at his student to see if he had gotten everything, which thankfully he had. "Good thing this kid soaks up information like a sponge." Racky smirked. "Before we can do anything, you have to learn to find your own chakra," said Racky as he formed the ram sign. "This is the ram sign, it is a hand seal commonly utilized to mold chakra. All you have to do is find your chakra and release it. Remember, we can't move forward until you have mastered this." Naruto nodded before placing his hands in the ram seal and began to search for any form of energy within his body. "You will feel a warm sensation when you find it. Don't be disappointed if you don't find it on your first TR." Racky started but was soon cut off by a large blast of energy. His eyes widened and then quickly focused on Naruto. A large blue orb of chakra had amassed itself around the boy, but anyone could see the ever so often flashes of red that penetrated the blue. The orb of chakra soon dissipated however and left a heavy breathing Naruto, smiling like a maniac. How was that?" Naruto asked between breaths. "Incredible," thought Racky as he continued to process what had just happened. Naruto has low Chunin level reserves and he is only 6. If they continue to grow like that, image what kind of powerhouse he'll be when he becomes a genin. Racky chuckled at his student's enthusiasm. "Nice going kid, but this will probably be one of the easiest things for you. Jinchuriki generally have higher reserves than most people because the demon inside them is just one great big spirit, creating giant reserves for their containers. Meaning that most of the main exercises we are going to be doing will focus around control, rather than building up your reserves." Naruto frowned at this new information, but comforted himself with the thought of how quickly he had found his chakra. Now comes the fun part. Racky grinned as he cracked his knuckles. Naruto paled, he was not looking forward to the next part of his training. Every morning at sunrise you will wake up and do 25 push-ups, 25 sit-ups, 100 punches for each arm, and 100 kicks for each leg. Finally, you will then run for 2 miles before coming to me for chakra control and other drills. Naruto gaped, are you insane? There is no way I will be able to do all that. Well, Racky's grin grew more sadistic. He put his hand on the ground where a large seal area appeared before calling out, Kuchius no Jutsu. There was a puff of smoke, and out came a large orange fox, easily the size of a horse. I could always have this guy chase you while you did your warm-ups as if on cue. The fox started to growl and brand his teeth. Needless to say, Naruto had already started. This continued for the next year. Every week or so Racky would up the regiment. His body, which was once malnourished and weak, was now strong and toned. He had grown a total of 3 inches after Racky had forced him to stop his all-ramen diet, standing well above the other 7-year-olds. After lots of persuasion on Naruto's part, Racky had also begun his taijutsu training in his personal style, the Kitsune no Suteru, a fighting form of his own invention that utilized feints and speed to deliver fatal blows to the enemy. Though he only knew the basic katas, Racky said that his body was perfectly built for the style of fighting. Naruto had also begun to wear weights. After Racky had discovered that Naruto's body quickly adapted to strain, had begun to add more weight twice a week. Currently he was on a total of 16 kilos per arm, 20 kilos on each legs, and 30 around his torso. His speed now with his weights was that of a seasoned genin, but when removed could match mid-chunin rank speeds. Though Naruto was not as skilled in control as his other focuses of training, they were good for someone his age. Racky had started him off on using his chakra to keep a blade of grass straight up on his finger. Though it was difficult, with lots of time and sweat, Naruto had managed to get one blade of grass to stand on the tip of his index finger. But, being the slave driver he was, Racky would not move on until it was second nature. After a month, when Naruto was able to keep 2 blades of grass straight up on all 10 fingers, Racky had shown him wall climbing, which after the control exercises he had been doing was a piece of cake. That was until Racky had him run up and down the wall for hours on end while he threw blunted kunai at him. Racky told Naruto that it served 3 purposes. The first was to heighten his control over his chakra, the second was to improve his evasion on the battlefield, and third was that it was really entertaining. When not training, Racky and Naruto were normally on the road, traveling from country to country, mostly staying out of Konoha, Iwa, and Suna territory. While on the road, the two worked on observation and education. Racky would have Naruto walk through a group of people, then ask him what he had learned. At first Naruto was confused as to the point of this training, before Racky explained that spotting the smallest irregularity in someone's appearance or stature could quickly tip you off and help you avoid trouble. Racky seemed to value the blonde's education greatly, as he constantly talked to him about geography, psychology, mathematics, human anatomy, politics, a session which Racky liked to call modified history Racky style, which only talked about great leaders and battle strategies, and Naruto's favorite subject, Fuinjustu. Sealing seemed to be an area of specialty for the blonde. He had seen Racky seal some supplies into a scroll. He had asked about it. Racky told him that sealing was a rare and complex art, few people knew how to do it properly, and was a commonly sought-out trade in the ninja world. He went on to explain that unlike Jinjustu or Ninjustu, Fuinjustu had almost no limitations. All it required was skill and creativity. At the next town Naruto had gone into the local library and read all the books he could about sealing. Discovering that it required very neat handwriting, he began to work on his own until everything he wrote was crisp and clean. He had later that day made his first sealing scroll, which surprised him, because in the books Naruto had checked out, it had said that the art of Fuinjustu took years to merely start, and he had done it in a week. When he asked Racky about it, he just chuckled, then said something like father like son. Unfortunately, before Naruto could clarify what that meant, Racky told him that they were going out for ramen to celebrate, which silenced all other thoughts in the blonde's mind. The day after Naruto had finished his extended warm-up of 300 push-ups, 300 sit-ups, 500 punches with each arm and leg, and his 15-mile run, he walked up to Racky, only to see a piece of blank paper in his hand. "What are we doing today, Iro Masuda?" Racky sighed. Over the past year Naruto had learned of Racky's high interests in the brothels, red light districts, and even the beautiful woman who happened to walk by in every town. Therefore, Naruto saw it deserving to call him Iro Masuda because he was pervy, and Racky had Naruto walk down the streets or in front the bathhouses to attract all of the women who just loved to touch his adorable whiskers. "Quiet kid, today we start your ninjutsu training. Now this doesn't mean that we are done with your other studies, only that we will be focusing a majority of our time on ninjutsu because of your gigantic reserves." Naruto nodded with a blank expression on his face. During their trip, one of the things that Racky had drilled into Naruto's head was the difference between work and leisure. While on his days off or breaks Naruto was his normal happy-go-lucky, ramen-loving self, as soon as the training began, he was a mask of concentration and tranquility. Racky held up a piece of paper. "This is chakra paper," he said as he waved it around. "By channeling your chakra into it, you can see what type of chakra nature you have. If it burns you have Kaiten, if it gets cut you have Futen, if it crinkles it is Raiten, Doten it turns to dust, and Suitin it dampens." Racky handed the paper to Naruto who quickly started to channel chakra into it. The results caused both student and teacher's eyes to widen in shock. The paper had split in half, and while one side quickly went up in flames, the other was crinkled to a ball that dropped on the floor. Was that supposed to happen?" Naruto asked as he picked up and examined the paper ball. Racky didn't say anything but quickly put another slip of chakra paper into his hand and said, again Naruto pushed chakra into the paper, and just like before, it split in half with one half burning to a crisp, while the other crumpled into a ball. Racky just stared at Naruto, silently contemplating the situation as he either rubbed his chin. After a few minutes Racky sighed before saying, "You are just a bunch of surprises aren't you kid? You have 3 chakra elements, Futen, Raiten, and Kaiten. Now you have a very high affinity towards your Raiten and Kaiten affinities." Naruto tilted his head, "And so?" Racky smacked his pupil, "Baka, most jonin only have 2 elements after years of training, to see 2 affinities in a child is rare, and 3 is close to impossible." Racky began to frown. "This also brings up the question of what the Kyuubi is doing inside of your body." Naruto began to get worried. Anytime they talked about the fox he got worried. How could he not when that thing had been the cause of all the pain he had experienced? "So what are we going to do about it?" "Not we kid, Racky said as looked up at the clouds, a quirk he picked up when he was debating with himself on an important matter. He looked back down at his shocked student before, in a blur of speed, moved behind his student. "You're gonna have to deal with it in him yourself." Before Naruto could get another word in, Racky delivered a quick chop to his troika, knocking him out cold. Racky looked at his unconscious student before picking him up and slowly placing him against a nearby tree. "Hope the kid and the furball get along," Racky muttered to himself, "or this is just going to be a huge waste of time." The first thing that Naruto awoke to was the sound of dripping water. Drip, drip, drip. When he opened his eyes, he could see that he was no longer in the green field he was this morning. He now lay in a pool of cold, murky water close to a foot deep. As he picked himself up from the floor, he realized that none of his clothes were wet, meaning that either this was a Jinjutsu or he was somewhere else. As his eyes adjusted to the light of the tunnel, he could see his surroundings more clearly. Surrounding him were many old rusted walls with small pipes that ran in every direction. While in the smaller pipes, a small blue tint could be seen, the larger and more noticeable pipes seemed to pulsate a crimson light as it was pumped through. Deciding that he should find way out of here, Naruto headed down the long corridor, making sure to keep the noise to a minimum. He had no idea where he was or how he had gotten there. The last thing he remembered was Racky knocking him out, but he wouldn't leave him in a place like this, right? And what was that about deal with him yourself crap? How the hell was he going to talk to a giant chakra monster in his stomach? Naruto stopped when he heard noise. Closer observation identified it as heavy breathing. As Naruto began to follow the sounds, they became louder and heavier, and the room temperature seemed to skyrocket. At the end of the corridor was a room shining the same crimson light he had seen running through the pipes. When Naruto peeked into the room he gasped. Inside was a colossal cage, with great iron bars that fell down from the ceiling. Across the center of the bars was a paper tag with the kanji seal written on it. Naruto knew what this room was. This was a seal, this was the Shikafuen, but more importantly, this was where the Kyuubi lived. Naruto tried to get a glimpse of what was in the cage, but could not see far enough in the eerie light. "Come closer," a small child's voice giggled. Naruto reluctantly stepped forward. "You're gonna have to get closer," that the voice said again, but this time with a laugh. "Okay, this is scaring the shit out of me though," Naruto as he was sweating bullets. Either a small child had somehow gotten locked in here too, or it was the fox trying to play games with him. Naruto took a deep breath, calming his nerves, before speaking in a steady voice, "Enough Kyuubi, I know it's you all, you're no fun." The voice started to lower and become more malevolent, "Just a couple more steps, and I could have gotten a meal. But oh well, I guess if you did fall for that then you would be a pitiful choice as my container." The nonchalance of the tone made Naruto flinch. How can he talk so calmly about eating someone? The large eye opened inside the darkness of the cage. The iris was a bloody crimson, while the pupil was a slit. "Why don't we do this the old-fashioned way?" Kyuubi smiled, showing off his set of sharp canines. "How about you come here and run around for a bit in my cage? I always did enjoy a good chase." "Maybe some other time," Naruto spoke as he tightened his fists to stop him from running straight at the thing that had been the cause of all his pain. "I need some answers, and unfortunately you are the one who has them." The Biju chuckled. My kid, I thought you had learned that you had to rely on yourself for answers." Or at least it is what you should have learned from the geezer. Naruto stayed silent as Kyuubi continued. How did it feel to learn that you had been lied to by Gigi? I really don't have to ask because I saw it for myself. The hate, the feeling of betrayal, the thirst for revenge. Shut up, Naruto muttered, a shadow across his eyes. The Kyuubi looked at him in mock confusion. Say something, kid. You will have to speak up, I said. Shut up. Naruto yelled at the giant kitsune, never blame Gigi because it is all your fault. If you didn't attack the village, I might have had a family, people would not have hurt me. Do you have any idea what kind of damage you have done? You stupid FO, but Naruto was cut off by a massive dose of killer intent. Watch your tongue, boy, Kyuubi hissed, his full-tailed form appearing. I merely stated what I saw, no need to get defensive about it. Also, I never hurt you, the villagers' own fear and misguided hate. Did Naruto seem to widen at the fox's point of view? On the contrary, the fox spoke, I was the one who healed your body from those attacks. If anything, you should be thanking me for not allowing you to die for 6 years. Naruto took a couple deep breaths to disperse his anger. Thank you, he finally said, though a bit forced, but we still have some things to discuss. Kyuubi grinned at his victory before nodding the boy to continue. Where are we? He asked first as he turned to look again at the sower. I see no harm in telling you that, the Kyuubi mused, this is called a mindscape, a section of your mind that the seal has constructed to help us communicate. It may look like a dump, but I blame the villagers' treatment, causing you to grow up with a bastardized vision of how the world is. A large tail pointed at one of the large pipes on the ceiling. These pipes have both your small and minuscule chakra and my overall superior chakra. From what I can tell, this seal has been siphoning off my own chakra and assimilating it with your own supply, making it continuously grow larger. Naruto nodded as he processed the fox's answer. So eventually, my reserves will merge with the rest of yours and you will disappear? He asked hopefully. The kitsune scoffed, Kit, even if I was forcing my chakra through the seal constantly, you would not live long enough to completely merge. In other words, you're stuck with me until you die. So you still have some control of your chakra? Questioned Naruto. I'm surprised that the seal would allow. The Kyuubi grew a prideful smile. No power is absolute, Kit. The seal could not take away my entire reserve on threat of also moving some of my mind along with it. But honestly, my traits is still entering your body as we speak. Naruto's eyes widened. Wait. Your thoughts are entering my mind right now. How do I get you out? I don't want to begin thinking that I am a demon fox. He spoke worriedly. No baka, traits, likes or dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, even affinities, Kyuubi calmly explained. For example, your whiskers and your love of ramen. When the stuff first came out, I would henge into a human so I could eat the delicious meal all day. The fox sighed dreamily and began to stare off into nothingness. Is this what I look like when I think about ramen? Naruto thought as he stared at the Lord of all Demons giggle as he thought about ramen. And my 3 affinities? Naruto asked, trying to call the Biju back to reality. Kyuubi shook off his ramen-induced dream, more like 2. Seeing Naruto's confused expression, he continued, if I had not been part of your body, your affinity would have mostly likely been Fuden, but seeing as we are stuck together, my affinities are slowly eradicating your original element and might mix to form my Kekkei Genkai. Might? Naruto asked, dreading what he knew was going to come next. Kyuubi grinned at the blonde child in front of his cage. Yes, might, it all depends on what happens today. Naruto took a couple more forced breaths before asking, alright, the whole deal with the devil kind of thing. So what do you have in mind? Simple, kid, I give you my Kekkei Genkai and train you how to use it and my own chakra and you help me get what I want. And what do you want exactly? Naruto was wondering what the most powerful Biju in the world could want. Well, truthfully, what I want is to be set free from this abysmal cage, Kyuubi said offhandedly. Naruto was about to object when the fox continued, but from careful examination of the seal, setting me free would also kill me. So I will go with the 2 next best things, have the feelings of what it is like outdoors again, and to watch the man responsible for all this suffer a painful and horrible death. Naruto quirked his eyebrow, how can you watch the yondaime suffer? He is already dead. The temperature of the room seemed to change from blazing heat to sub-zero. When Kyuubi spoke, his voice was harsh and cold. The yondaime may be responsible for sealing me, but the person who tricked me into attacking that pitiful village is still alive and I won't rest until I can use his spine as a toothpick. Naruto gulped. If there is someone who was strong enough to manipulate the Kyuubi, why would he have him try to destroy the leaf? Alright, the revenge part I can help with. If someone did force you to attack the leaf, then he is the reason for my horrible childhood. But how do you plan on helping you feel the outside again? The room temperature resumed its previous unbearable temperature, and Kyuubi spoke as if nothing had happened. Well, that's easy, all you have to do is rip off a corner of the seal. What? Screamed Naruto. But even if I made the smallest tear in that seal, the rest would slowly fall apart, causing you to be released. Geez, relax, kid, the Kyuubi said, a large sweat drop coming down his head. Besides, the 4th seal has so many backups that ripping of a little piece will barely weaken the cage. Tell you what, since I am feeling so generous today, I will sweeten the deal. I will throw in telling you about my previous container. Naruto adopted a confused expression, still slightly against the idea of altering the seal. Why would I want to know that? It might be better if I tell you her name first, the fox mused as he pretended to think. Her name was Uzumaki Kushina, or what you would have called her, Kasan. Naruto's eyes grew to the size of dinner plates. Why you mean she was my mother? Naruto was barely able to keep the tears of joy of discovering his parentage under control. Yes, Kid, your mother, the Kyuubi spoke in a calm voice, and I am giving you the opportunity to get to know her. She may be gone, but I have a stockpile of memories of her. That is if you want to know, the Kyuubi baited. Wiping all doubt from his mind, Naruto appeared in front of the seal. How much should I rip off? The Kyuubi gave a toothy grin at the boy's enthusiasm, about the size of your thumb, but you might want to brace yourself. When Naruto ripped the piece of paper, at first he felt nothing, but that quickly when red chakra engulfed him, spreading pain throughout his entire body. Wow, what is this? Naruto hissed. That is why I told you to brace yourself, the Kyuubi chided the blonde. I might as well finish my part of the deal. Kushina was exactly like you. Brash, stubborn, loud, and obnoxious, the self-named queen of pranks. In truth, the only difference I see between yours and her personality is that while you favor orange, she favored red. Though Naruto was in a great deal of pain, he allowed a small smile to cross his face. Thank you Kyuubi-san. Those were his last words as he drifted off into dreamless sleep, leaving a stunned Kyuubi. Kyuubi-san, huh? The fox chuckled to himself, the kid may have promise after all. The Kyuubi then left to begin his surprise to the kid when he woke up. Your child will not be weak, Kushina-san, I owe you that much. When Naruto awoke, his entire body felt sore. He groaned as he pushed himself up to a sitting position. He then began to go over all that had happened. Was it all a dream? Suddenly a familiar voice spoke inside his head. No kid, it was all real. Kyuubi? Naruto said, looking around, trying to find the location of the voice. Wow kid, just when I was this close to acknowledging that you have some brains, you had to go baka on me, don't you remember our deal? Everything you see, feel, hear, and touch, so will I. The only response he got back was a grumble and something that sounded like, Kitsune team. Great kid, you're up. Naruto turned to see his master, Racky leaning on a tree chewing some pocky. If you had slept any longer, I would have gotten to go through with my plan to use you to hit on nurses at the hospital. You really need to wake up faster. Thanks, I'll remember that when you knock me out next time, Naruto said sarcastically, which Racky just held up his hands in mock defense. Sorry kid, but it had to be done. The only way to meet your Biju without previous contact is to either be unconscious or in a life or death experience, and believe me, you would have looked a lot worse if I had thrown you off a cliff. Choosing to ignore his sensei's comment, Naruto steadily stood up. Well, in the end it worked. Racky's face lost all playfulness as he entered his ninja mode, waving at Naruto to continue. Naruto then went on to talk about his meeting with the Kyuubi, the deal they had made, and the discovery of his birth mother. Throughout the explanation, Racky just stayed silent, every so often nodding his head. When Naruto had finished, Racky sighed, well, I guess I was correct about one of your parents, but the name Uzumaki should tipped me off sooner. Naruto glared at his teacher. So you knew and didn't tell me? Racky just sent a glare back. It was only a thought. What if I had been wrong and had brought up your hopes for nothing? Naruto flinched before looking down at his feet. Sorry about that. Racky's glare lightened upon seeing Naruto's reaction and gave the boy a smile. Just take it easy kid, it must be tough to learn about your family considering the life you had, but what I would really like to know is the Kekkei Genkai that Kyuubi-san talked about. In a way it is pure genius, mused Kyuubi. By combining my Raiten and my Kaiten chakra types, I have created something I like to call a Kai Inazuma. It is generally an undefeatable element. Futon attacks that would normally beat a Raiten attack actually increases its power. Also when the attack hits, it causes a burn that spreads throughout the body, slowly turning your opponent's chakra system to ash. In simpler terms, all of your Raiten justice are a lot stronger than normal. Naruto relayed what the fox had said to Racky, who began to grin in anticipation. Well, good news, bad news, kid. The good news is that Kumo is known for their Raiten justice, the bad news is that your training just got a whole lot harder. Without warning, Racky threw a paper bomb at Naruto's feet, which barely gave him enough time to jump out of the blast range. Turning to look at his teacher, who had a sadistic gleam in his eye, said, you should run now kid. Naruto paled, and Kyuubi began to laugh. Oh, this is going to be fun. Kakashi walked down the main street of Konoha reading his Icha. If one were to quickly glance at the man, they would see nothing different from the day before, but to those who knew him, they could see that he was troubled. Things had not been going well for Konoha. Naruto's death had caused a drastic change to the people he knew. After his mission to find Naruto's killers, he had found them quite quickly. But instead of putting up a fight, they just walked through the street, yelling to the crowds of their deed. Many cheered. When their trial was brought up, despite some of the clans and the Sandaime, the civilian court had issued them a pardon. Counselor Haruno had even recommended that they be promoted to jonin for doing a civil service. It took both Kakashi and Guy to stop Kurenai from trying to place one of her most horrifying genjutsus on her. At night there were parties throughout the street celebrating the true demon's death. Seeing as the boy was dead, the third's law no longer had any sway with the villagers, who proceeded to tell their children the so-called truth about Naruto, causing two sides to form, the ones who thought that he was really a demon in disguise, and the ones who saw him as the protector of the village, forever holding the Kyuubi at bay. Kakashi's single eye narrowed a bit as he thought of the villagers. Over the past 2 years he had grown to hold a slimmer of hate towards the ones he was sworn to protect. He now only spoke with a select group of jonin outside of missions. To make matters worse, his Anbu service almost up and would soon have to quit to become a jonin sensei for the last Uchiha. The Sandaime who was once ever kind and compassionate was gone. In his place was a powerful leader who would do anything to protect the village. Or at least to some Kakashi mused as the Sandaime had kept his warm smile for his Anbu, family, and some of the jonin. I had become even more enthralled into his own youth as he trained, fought, and challenged Kakashi to menial tasks more and more often. When asked why, he would just say that he was reclaiming the youth that should have been Naruto's. The Ichirokas, when they had heard about Naruto's death, had closed the store for 2 weeks. When it reopened, a small shelf was set behind the counter, with a young AM and Naruto smiling at the camera, with a large bowl of ramen in front of them. Anyone who insulted the boy or the shelf was immediately kicked out. Kakashi admired them for staying so strong even in the face of darkness. Kurenai was the most affected out of everyone. She felt that she had failed Kushina and proceeded to push herself further and further into her work. An all too similar reaction to Kakashi. While she had always been well reserved with her emotions, she completely withdrew from outside contact with everyone but her best friend, Anko, Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma, who had returned from his time outside of the village and when he had heard of Kushina's child's death, was set to leave again. When Kakashi looked up from his book, he realized that he had walked all the way to the Hokage's monument, but more specifically, an iron shield welded into the rock. On the shield was written in bright orange letters, "Here lies the spirit of Uzumaki Naruto, let his spirit protect us like he did with the Kyuubi in his life." This was the only thing that the Sandaime had been able to get Naruto, and even still it was vandalized. Kakashi wiped off some of the grime before placing a steaming hot bowl of ramen on the altar. Eat up Naruto. 2 figures stood across from each other on an open plain. One was a man close to his 30s, while the other was a boy, roughly 10 years old in age with blonde spiky hair. He wore black baggy pants, which to the naked eye it appeared that all of the pockets were empty. But, to the eyes of a trained ninja, one could tell that the entire inside of each pocket was brimming with storage seals. The boy also wore a tattered dark orange muscle shirt with a white lightweight zip-up sweatshirt with grey storm clouds running down the arms. The two opponents were Racky and Naruto, nearly 3 years after the first contact with the Kyuubi. Racky smirked, then signaled Naruto to begin, at which point the blonde gave a quick calculative glance around the area before charging. Naruto jumped at his teacher with the intent to kill, aiming a punch at Racky's head. Racky easily moved, dodged the attack and went for the unguarded side of Naruto's body with a quick chop to the neck. However, Naruto saw this coming and grabbed Racky's wrist and used its momentum to pull him over his shoulders. When Racky was right on top of his back, Naruto jumped into the air, twisted, and tossed his sensei into the ground. Naruto grinned at his accomplishment, but it quickly melted away when he saw Racky standing in a crater, picking the dirt off his nails and looking quite bored. When Naruto landed a couple of feet away from Racky, he glared at the fact that he was barely taking him seriously, but quickly calmed himself to think up a strategy to defeat him. However, he did not have this luxury, because just then Racky appeared in front of him, engaging him in a fierce series of jabs and kicks. Naruto dodged the ones he could, but still a few managed to hit him in the gut, knocking the wind out of him. After a few minutes of dodging, Naruto finally managed to get far enough away from Racky to place his plan into action. Thinking fast, he quickly produced 4 Raiten Bushnins, which moved to various locations around Racky. When all of them were in position, the clones to the north threw a group of kunai straight at Racky. He dodged them easily, but then at the last moment noticed a small hissing noise coming from one of the projectiles. He turned to see a seal tied to one of the kunai. Paper bomb. He thought before jumping out of the blast range. When he looked back, he saw another cluster of paper bombs flying at him, which he dodged again. What is he planning? Racky thought as he proceeded to play cat and mouse while trying to watch all 4 Naruto, who all had a similar grin plastered on their faces. After a while Racky was getting irritated, so this time when he saw the kunai coming, he took out his own kunai and started to bat away the barrage before using his expert aim to throw and aim his kunai through the paper bomb's hole, pushing it towards one of the Narutos. When the paper bomb went off, the clone was discharged in a spark of lightning. Racky slowly stood up, taking some breaths to relax himself while he looked at the remaining clones, who had all lost their smirks. Nice plan to begin with, kid, he complimented. You use your bushnans as markers to continuously throw explosives at me, keeping me moving, slowly causing me to tire and make it easier for you to hit me. However, it is going to take a lot more than that if you want to surpass me, he boasted. But his fun was cut short when he felt a presence coming at him from behind. When he turned, he was facing two Naruto clones rushing at him. When did he make those? Racky thought as he surveyed the battleground. His eyes soon fell upon a group of kunai that had a few less than the others. So, he not only used the kunai as a way to keep me moving, but also to plant some traps for me if I ever escaped. Damn, this is starting to get interesting. Racky grinned at the progress of his student. The first clone jumped at Racky trying to bind his knees, which Racky jumped into the air to avoid. Then the second sprang after him going for a quick kick at his left shoulder. Racky grabbed Naruto's fist, then spun to throw the clone away, sending him and the clone in opposite directions. What Racky was not expecting was for Naruto to break through the ground with a charged upper Raikyu between two kunai. If you think that I'm too much of a coward to attack you head-on, then you got another thing coming. Naruto then threw both kunai at Racky, who could do nothing to stop them as they headed right towards his chest. When they hit, there was a flash of lightning as sparks danced around Racky's body before he hit the ground. Naruto watched for a second, keeping his guard up just in case Racky was faking it. But when after 2 minutes neither had moved, he assumed it was done. Wow, Naruto said as he scratched his head, I thought it would be harder than that. Just then, he felt the familiar touch of a cold blade under his neck. It never is, kid, Naruto cursed. Kneeling right behind him was Racky, with one kunai pressed to his jugular, while the other was pressing down hard on his kidneys, both vital spots. As I said before, your planning and strategy was good, continued Racky as he pressed the kunai a bit deeper into his throat, making it a bit harder for Naruto to breathe. If you were fighting a Chunin level shinobi, you would have won with that combo, constantly moving your opponent around, making them think that they are making the choices to jump where they want when really you're positioning them closer and closer to you so you can jump out and surprise them. However, you forgot that since I am considered to be a S-rank nin, those tactics would do little against me. Also, when you dropped your guard around my body, you left yourself open to attack, Racky chided as he removed the blades from Naruto's neck, allowing him to breathe easier. The beginning and the end of a battle are the most important parts, said Racky as he proceeded to readjust his bones with a loud series of cracks. We are ninja, we never play by the rules, so odds are we are never going to go down alone. Naruto nodded as his eyes were focused on a blade of grass near his feet. Now then, Naruto looked up to see the devious smile of his teacher. I believe we made a deal this time about whether or not you would win. All the blood from Naruto's face instantly drained. In seconds he was at Racky's feet, begging for him to reconsider. Please, Yoro Masuda. Anything but that. Do you need any help hitting on the women at the bathhouses? Market. Anywhere. Just anything but that. Racky's grin grew larger. Nope, kid, this was the bet. If you won, I would not go to another brothel for 2 weeks, but if I won, oh, the excitement is killing me. He began to laugh at Naruto's horrified expression. I'll say it slowly just to savor the moment. No. Raymond. 4. 2 weeks. Naruto's world shattered when he heard those words. Nuo. He screamed as large and tears fell down his face. Damn it, kid, do you see what you've done? Ranted the Kyuubi from Naruto's mindscape. Why would you bet such an important treasure? Now what are we going to do? The fox was near a mental breakdown of its own at the thought of being separated from his precious. I had no idea he would follow through, I swear, Naruto thought back as he cried over the loss of the first love of his life, Raymond. Seeing that this was not going to end soon, Racky shrugged before grabbing his student by the hood and dragging him back to the village. Naruto glared at the bowl of udon in front of him. When the pair had arrived in town, they had decided to grab something to eat. They were currently on a small coastal town of U. Racky was leaving to go gather some information for Kumo for a couple of months, so this would be Naruto's temporary base of operations where he would eat, sleep, and train. Naruto shifted his gaze to his sensei, which just to irk him, had gotten a bowl of miso ramen, his favorite. Now many people would argue that there was not a ramen flavor that he didn't like, but Naruto would just respond by throwing a couple of shuriken at them. It was not his fault that all ramen was delicious. Racky ignored the glares his student was giving him and continued to focus on his meal. After taking a purposely loud slurp, he turned a lazy eye and analyzed Naruto. His build was larger, anyone could tell from just a glance. His eyes darted around the room at a fast pace, while his fingers twitched at the slightest irregularity. Across his face was a black mask that covered the nose and mouth. After multiple instances of different Naruto fan clubs popping up in the towns that they had visited, much to Racky's displeasure, Naruto had started to wear a mask to keep the fangirls away. They were getting smarter though, they had started to track his location. After Racky had cleaned his bowl, he stood up and walked to the door. He threw some keys over his shoulder, which Naruto caught without hesitation. Those are the keys to the room I booked, it is already paid for so don't piss them off. He turned back so he faced his student. I have something I want you to work on for the next month, so when you are done, find me. Racky then popped out of existence, leaving nothing more than a smoke cloud. Naruto sighed as he realized that this was another part of his training, being able to find people by their scent. He paid for his and Racky's meal before taking to the rooftops in pursuit. After half an hour, Naruto had followed Racky's trail to a small clearing in the forest, surrounding the town. There waiting was Racky, holding a blunt katana and a large scroll. The katana was quite bare, Naruto could tell that it was a practice blade, a substitute for a real blade, when the wielder was ready. However, the scroll was a different story. The bindings were rusted red, while the parchment looked faded but still legible. Along the side was a red fox with its tail splitting off to intertwine around the scroll. Finally kid, now we can begin said Racky, while Naruto shot him a not so subtle glare, but it quickly disappeared when Racky's face cooled itself. The day kid, you will be taking another step towards replacing me. As the kitsune Senin Racky rolled out the scroll on the ground, Naruto could see Racky's name written on the parchment, along with 4 or more other fading signatures. This is the kitsune summoning contract, Racky said as he traced his finger along his own name. I found this on my travels, and was one of the rare few allowed to sign it. The foxes are very picky in their summoners and as you can see, few have ever been chosen. They want their partners to be strong, cunning, and have good intentions, and if they choose you as a summoner, then you will have a strong ally. Naruto nodded, soaking in all the information as Racky continued. Foxes, while not one of the strongest with brute strength, are the smartest out of all the other contracts, constantly tricking and confusing their enemies into falling into traps. They have the uncanny ability to see through genjutsus, along with casting them, and are excellent trackers and masters in stealth. In other words, they suit you perfectly. Racky looked up at the sky, the sun had already gone down, and a shallow dusk had appeared over the trees. You need to sign your name in blood, then I will show you the hand seals to summon, get them the first time because I will only be showing you once, he said as he watched Naruto quickly tear off some skin on his index finger, before quickly writing down his name. Alright, now here comes the hard part, whether they accept you or not, said Racky, as he quickly showed Naruto the hand seals before he tried it on his own. Fuchius no jutsu yelled Naruto as he slammed his hand into the ground, causing an array of seals to appear. The seals soon disappeared in a puff of smoke, and there in its place was an orange fox around the size of small dog. The fox had an iron plate on its chest with the kanji for fire on it. Dear Racky-san, how's it been? What did you call me for? The fox said with a large grin on his face. Racky smiled at the small fox, pretty good Idazura, but I wasn't the one who summoned you, he said pointing at Naruto. Hi Naruto smartly responded, still mesmerized about what he had just done. The fox, now known as Idazura, narrowed his eyes at Naruto, slowly observing the boy. He then walked up to Naruto's feet before jumping to his shoulder in one bound. When he was properly seated, he stared intently at Naruto's eyes while his tail explored the rest of his head. When his tail went over Naruto's nose, he sneezed, but this did not even distract the fox. After 2 minutes of silence, Idazura said in a jovial tone, he looks alright, Two-san might be okay with this one. He doesn't look like he frightens easily. Naruto was unsure on whether that was a compliment or an insult, so he gave the intellectual response of, thanks. Idazura just grinned back, don't mention it, just don't be a weakling, I would hate to have my familiar be a little sap that gets beat up all the time. This got Naruto pissed, what did you say furball? He tried to smash his fist into the small fox's head, but it quickly jumped away from his shoulder onto a nearby tree branch, still grinning. Oh, he has quite the temper, Araki-san. Yes, I do believe I will have a lot of fun with him as my familiar, Idazura said as he looked at Racky who just sighed. Just be careful Idazura, get too far on his bad side, and you will regret it. He is almost as good a prankster as you, Racky said with a shiver, as he remembered the time he had gotten on the blonde's bad side and had ended up with many bruises and broken bones from an organized attack by the female populace of town. Naruto, still growling at Idazura asked, Araki, who is the furball, and what does he mean by familiar? Idazura just looked at Naruto, then gave a sheepish grin, oh how rude of me, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Idazura, second heir to the Kitsune clan after my father, Kitsunebosu. Naruto nodded in understandment as Idazura continued, and by familiar, well it means that I will be the main person you contact when you summon. For summoners in our clan, depending on who is your familiar, it will determine your social class and the amount of respect you hold. The classes go from the boss, to the heirs, to the warriors, to scouts, and then messengers, with the first being the most respected, and the later being the least. When Idazura had finished his explanation, Naruto thought it over, so the warriors, scouts, and messengers will listen to me. Yes and no, Idazura said, yes they will listen to you but not completely because you will still have to gain their respect, and also with father, you will need to earn his if you want any help from him. So what can you do? Naruto asked as he looked over the fox in front of him. Finally, a worthwhile question, Idazura said in his playful tone, being a clan heir, I am required to know all of the professions that my clan offers, so I have been taught to be a jack of all trades of sorts. In combat I am proficient and slowly gaining progress, Jinjutsus are a piece of cake for me, and my stealth is well known around my clan for the numerous pranks I pull. Haha, Bodagato must still be cleaning paint out of his hair. Naruto smiled at the thought of having another prankster as a friend, well I can gladly say that we have some things in common. I will be an honor to work with you Idazura, just call me Naruto. Idazura gave a small, sincere smile, the same, Naruto, summon me later and we will work out all the details, but until then, Jana. And in a puff of smoke, he was gone. Racky cleared his throat to gain his students' attention, well I must say that you got lucky there, kid, having an heir as the familiar is a major pull in that clan, but now on to the second reason I brought you here. Racky pulled a katana out of the ground and tossed it to Naruto. In Kumo, to become Jonin rank, it is required that you have some sort of skill in Kenjutsu, Racky said as he began to pull up his own sleeve to reveal a ceiling tattoo. When he pushed blood on the ink, a small katana, easily 4 feet in length appeared. The design was simple, almost identical to the one Naruto had, but the handle was wrapped in red black tape, while the blade had a long red tail running up it. Each sword has its own name, which is normally given by the wielder or by the master. For example, my sword's name is Chio, or Bloodtail, basically because I slaughtered over 200 ninja with it. Naruto widened his eyes, unsure whether to be awed or horrified. This however is a practice blade, you will not get your own until you can wield a sword properly. So until then I want you to read and practice the Kenjutsu scrolls I left in your room along with your normal routine while I am gone. When I return I will observe whether Kenjutsu is an appropriate fighting style for you, Racky said as he began to walk towards the harbor. I will be back in around a month, so until then no slacking off, got that, kid? I want to be completely blown away when I return. Then he disappeared in a shunshin, leaving Naruto to his thoughts. Hi sensei, Naruto said quietly, before he rushed to his room to begin reading the scrolls. Amaeri Ringo was annoyed. For the past 2 years of her life, she had been on the run from the hunter nin of Kiri, trying to keep a low profile to all of the bandits and other hidden villages, so she would not have any more trouble, and finally, she was no closer to finding a cure. Amaeri was part of the few Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu, and also the only female member. Her skills with her swords, the kibas, were legendary, saying that she could cut through anything with a single swipe of her twin blades. However, with the start of the bloodline wars, many of the members were suspected of carrying Kekkei Genkai and were either hunted or killed. Since Amaeri used a flow of Raiten chakra to enhance her strikes, she was to be brought up for questioning then execution on her supposed Kekkei Genkai. However, before she would let that happen, she joined Zabuza Mamachi, a fellow member in a coup d'etat of the Mizukage. However their efforts were in vain as Yugura not only defeated them, but also managed to poison Amaeri's chakra pathways, making it almost impossible to mold or control chakra. After she had escaped Kiri, she discovered from a traveling doctor that the poisoning was slowly killing her and that she would not make it much longer. Her estimated time was almost 2 months before she hit the dirt. She observed her surroundings for the 20th time since she had entered the bar, a trait she had picked up after being on the run for so long. She was in a small coastal town in Yu and was planning on staying for about a month before moving on. It was not good to stay in one place for more than that, otherwise the hunter nin would find her. Amaeri sighed as she took another sip of her drink and flicked a strand of her light blue hair away from her face. She was wearing a simple kimono where the light imprints of waves could be seen. On her sides was the twin blade, kiba, which she would never take off. Drinking had become sort of a habit for Amaeri, why not? In her opinion, if she was going to die, might as well be drunk off her ass as well. She hated that side of her, it was just so depressing, even if she was having a good time, that voice would pierce her thoughts and remind her that it was the end for her. After slowly staggering out of the bar, she proceeded to make her way down the busy marketplace. Even when drunk she had the talent to avoid the commoners and fishermen as they went on with their daily lives. She had just reached the inn she was staying at when she felt something odd. It felt like chakra but had a weird pull to it. It felt wild and untamed, not the normal chakra signature from a hunter nin, who normally kept their restores hidden or had a very small one to begin with. Against her better judgment, she decided to investigate and took to the trees in the direction of the chakra. When she arrived, she was surprised to see a training ground completely covered in craters and scorch marks. From Amaeri's observation, the damage seemed to be done by Raiten and Kaiten Justice. She then began to look around for the person who had caused this damage and was shocked once again to see a boy, no older than 10, slashing at a tree with a dull katana. Amaeri could see that he was not that good, but he did have potential. The boy stood in a white sweatshirt and ninja pants, breathing heavily as sweat dripped down his body. Though the boy's form was horrible, he did have the strength, speed, and endurance to become a powerful swordsman. Mayuri watched for close to an hour as the boy continuously practiced different slashes into the tree. As she watched, she soon concluded that the form was the problem. It was not that he did not have the talent, but that the form was built for someone who had strong center gravity and could take hits but then quickly counter with their own. The boy's body was built to deal quick and devastating blows to an opponent while keeping close enough to easily block any attack that they tried. This was a similar problem that Mayuri used to have because most sword styles were as if dancing with their enemies, hers was quick and brutal, planning on ending the battle in the quickest and most damaging manner. When it was close to noon, the blonde boy finally stopped and moved over to his pack, only to pull out a box of dangos. Mayuri's stomach growled. With her latest drinking binge, she was now strapped for cash. She would normally just do a quick assassination mission or something easier, but Yu had never had many of those types of missions, so she was stuck. Just then a brilliant idea popped into her head. As she continued to think it through, a small grin made its way onto her face. Oh, this is going to be fun, she thought, before jumping to meet the small blonde. Naruto angrily popped a dango into his mouth. Racky had left 3 days ago, and he had not made any improvement on his kenjutsu. After he had left, Naruto had gone straight to the room and spent the entire night reading the scroll until he could recite them by memory. But even if he knew about the style, it was far different from being able to do it. There is more to kenjutsu than just style, kit, said Kyuubi inside the mindscape. Over the past years, Kyuubi and Naruto had somewhat bonded, being able to call themselves the lightest meaning of the word, friends. Even though Kyuubi constantly made brash and sexual comments about many of the women Naruto saw, causing him to never see the woman the same again, he would put in a useful comment or some words of encouragement every once in a while. From what I can see, you are just not right for this style, it requires a strong base, well you like to jump around and randomly attack vitals. Naruto nodded at the fox's words and was about to reach and grab another dango when he found that the box was now empty. Looking around, he soon noticed a young woman who was sitting on a stump of a tree, eating his dangos. She had light blue hair with pale hazel eyes, her kimono was plain, except for a light arrange of waves that were the texture of the dress. Her stance, though relaxed, expressed a feeling of respect. Thanks for the snack, the woman said as she finished off the last of the treat. Mayuri again re-examined the boy. Now that she was closer, she could see that he had a slim, muscular build and sapphire blue eyes. When she saw the whisker marks, she had to beat her inner fangirl with a stick to keep herself from glumping the poor boy. When Naruto finally regained his shock of being snuck upon, he took an offensive stance, ready for attack. Who are you and what are you doing here? The light blue-haired woman gave a soft smile, which lowered Naruto's guard a bit. My name is Mayuri, and who are you? Naruto, but you still haven't answered my question, he said, but as he begun to pull of a kunai, he felt 2 iron blades, one on his neck and the other on his stomach. Mayuri was standing right behind him, holding the swords in place, her kind smile replaced with a scowl. It is not very polite to pull a dagger on a stranger, Naruto-san, her voice was so cold that Naruto shivered. But considering that this is probably your first actual meeting with a woman and your whiskers are so cute, we will forget you did that. Mayuri's tone had changed from ice cold to happy as she removed her swords from Naruto's neck, but not before pinching his cheek. After releasing his breath, Naruto looked back at Mayuri. Oh no, but what are you doing here, Mayuri-san, his tone much more polite and controlled than before. She gave him the same kind smile as she did before. That was good, Naruto-kun. Well, to answer your question, I was walking near here when I heard you training and decided to take a peek. I was quite impressed with the jutsus, but your kenjutsu seems a bit lacking, doesn't it? Naruto's mouth dipped into a frown on the last part. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, I am copying the style exactly like in the scroll, but it just feels wrong. Mayuri nodded at his statement. You aren't doing anything wrong. Naruto's eyes moved to Mayuri. It is just that you are not built for this style of kenjutsu. While the style I saw you trying to use focuses on defense rather than attacks, you yourself like to attack more and not give the time for the opponent to attack. Naruto's eyes widened after hearing that, as it was the same thing that Kyuubi said. So if I find another style that fits me, I could use that instead, he asked hopefully. Yep, which pretty much brings me to why I am here, Mayuri said as she put her swords back into their sheaths. Here's my deal, currently I am a bit low on cash and cannot afford my necessities, so if you pay for the things I need, I will help you with your training. I'll even throw in some lessons on how to treat a lady. It will be pretty fun if I remember the last time I taught it. Mayuri giggled as she thought how she had forced all of the Kiri no Shinabigatana Shichinen Shu to learn her class on threat of being castrated. While Naruto watched a giggling woman in front of him, he pondered how he was going to answer. Do it, kid, the Kyuubi's voice echoing through his thoughts. Why should I? Naruto thought back, why should I take an offer from a woman I just met? 1. You are absolutely horrible at kenjutsu, and she is offering to help you. By the way, she is giggling about the etiquette lessons. I would not want to see what would happen if you refused, the Kyuubi put it shortly. After Amayuri had finished her giggles, Naruto accepted her deal, and they both shook on it. So anything I should be improving on in this style? Naruto asked. Amayuri took the katana out of his hands. She moved her hands expertly down the blade, changed grips, and after 2 minutes, she said, nothing of value, and threw it up into the air, before obliterating it with a Raiten jutsu. Naruto looked at her wide-eyed, what the hell was that for? He screamed, to which Amayuri just smacked him on the head with the butt of her sword. Rule 1 for etiquette, women are always right, you will survive a lot longer if you take that to heart. Second, that sword was pointless for the style I am going to be teaching you. She then pulled up the hem of her kimono to show a ceiling tattoo on her right calves. When she added blood, 2 swords, almost identical to the ones around her waist, appeared in her hands. She then proceeded to give both swords to Naruto and make a Mizubushinen that got in a fighting stance. Follow my clone's movements while I make adjustments, Naruto wanted to clarify, but his head still hurt from that last hit, so he just went along with it. It continued like that for about a week. Naruto would spend hours mimicking Amayuri's Bushinen, while the real Amayuri would correct his footing, grips, etc. if they needed any. After that they had moved to spars, where Amayuri would train Naruto to adapt during the fight to different types of attacks. At about sunset every day, they would finish training, and Naruto would take Amayuri out to dinner to learn table manners, social etiquette, and other valued social traits. Amayuri had also forbid Naruto to wear his mask in town, saying that he needed to confront his fears. She always had a good laugh as she watched him get mauled by rabid fangirls. During their time together, they had both taken a liking to each other. Naruto even began to call Amayuri Ni-chan. She was surprised when she first heard this, but gave him a hug in appreciation. The two were currently in a small bar, where Naruto was watching Amayuri drink herself numb. He had observed quickly that she was a heavy drinker, but the last week she had been really overdoing it. Amayuri tried to grab another drink, but before she could reach it, Naruto moved it out of her grasp. What's going on, Amayuri-ni-chan? He asked. He could not just leave her like this. If you keep on drinking like that, you'll be dead by tomorrow. Amayuri looked at Naruto, silently judging whether she should tell him. After a couple of seconds, she motioned for him to follow her. After they had left the bar, they walked in silence to the spot where they had first met. Amayuri then began to loosen her top, causing Naruto to blush. Yes. I knew this would lead to something. Kyuubi cheered from his cage. But Amayuri did not remove her entire top, she only moved the cloth away from her stomach to reveal a long scar. Naruto could tell that there had been attempts to heal it, but the skin around it was dead and black. I got this from fighting the Mizukage, she started, gaining Naruto's attention. Me and another member of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu tried to stage a revolt, but he defeated us and ending up poisoning me. Currently I have about a month left. Naruto looked at her in horror. He deeply cared for Amayuri, enough that he had made her one of his precious people. He could not stand to see her die. The way I see it, I am going to die anyway, so why not leave something here that people will remember me by, said Amayuri as she tightened her kimono. I can see it, Naruto-kun, you are going to be great, and along with my sword style, you might even be one of the top shinobi in all of the elementals. You have learned my style almost flawlessly, the only thing you need now is my final secret and how I can cut through almost anything. But, after I show you, the heavy use of chakra will probably kill me. Tears were beginning to well up in Naruto's eyes. He tried to back away, he tried to stop her, but before he could do anything, he was pulled into a fierce hug. Don't be sad, Naruto-kun, if I had not met you, I would have been filled with sadness until I died. But thanks to you, I can leave in peace. She then kissed him on his forehead and backed away. Now the secret is to channel your Raiten chakra at a slightly wild current down the blade, just think of a saw cutting down a tree. Then after you have that, just speeds it up. Amayuri's blades began to glow light blue, and her breathing became heavy. She then rushed over to a group of rocks, and in an instant, the once mighty boulders were nothing more than a pile of pebbles. She collapsed after that. Naruto rushed to her aid, moving her body, trying to make it as comfortable as he could. I will miss you, Amayuri-ni-chan, he said, tears beginning to roll down his cheeks. She gave him that same warm smile she had when they had met. I will miss you too, Atoto, and with her last bit of strength, she pushed the kibas into his hands before death finally took her. Naruto stayed there for a while before he actually moved. He slowly dug a large hole at the base of the tree that he had met her at and then gently lowered Amayuri's corpse into the ground. When the hole was filled again, he carved her name into the bark of the tree and stabbed the 2 training swords into the dirt. This was the scene that Racky came by when he returned to find his student staring at a tree with 2 swords at the base of it. When he moves closer, he recognized the name and to his shock, looked to find the twin kibas hoisted at Naruto's waist. After carefully reading the situation, he moved over to Naruto and put his hand on his shoulder. Naruto didn't even jump, he just looked up at Racky with red puffy eyes, to which he responded with a somber smile. "She's in a better place now, kid," he said softly, to which Naruto nodded before turning around and walking to the inn to grab his stuff. Now would not be the best time to tell him, thought Racky as he watched Naruto leave. Flashback: Racky sat in a lively bar off the coast of Hai no Kuni. There was a bachelor party going on in the background and the mood was drunk and happy. Racky looked over to his escort, a busty brunette with light brown eyes. She wore a tight one-piece made out of light fabric that was only held up by her giant teacups. "Why don't we find a more comfortable place?" he said, his voice dripping with lust. The woman gave him a playful smirk. "Anything for you, Racky-sama," he grinned as he led the way to an empty room upstairs. When they had arrived, he quickly locked the door and placed a silencing seal on the wall. "So what were you able to find out?" Racky asked, his previous demeanor gone. "You were right about the village hating him," the woman said as she moved to sit on the bed. "They still celebrate his death." Racky frowned. "Ami, does anyone at all miss him?" he asked, trying to find a bit of good news. The woman, now known as Ami, nodded. "Not that much, but they are there. The Hokage has completely changed since he left. Also there are a couple of jonins that I have seen acting a bit saddened whenever his name is brought up. But the biggest thing I've seen is this small raiment stand where they actually have a photo of him in the store and anyone who insults it is kicked out." Racky smiled at that, making a mental note to someday find and pay the family handsomely for their kindness. "And what about the other thing I asked you to look up?" he asked. This was the main reason he had come here. Ami reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial of blood. "It was a bitch to get, but it proves it. Uzumaki Naruto is the son of Uzumaki Kushina and Namek is Minato." She tossed the vial to Racky, who hid it in his cloak. "Well, now he has good blood and an adorable face. Oh, if he were just a couple of years older." Ami pretended to swoon. Racky just rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, thanks for the help. Just keep me posted and we will talk soon," he said as he began to walk out the door. "Say hi to Naru-kun for me and tell him that my door is always open," Ami said with a wink. End of flashback. "I can't tell him now, maybe later when all this has blown over," Racky thought as he followed his student to his room. Two shadows walked along a rocky and jagged path in Kaminari no Kuni. The sun sparked down on the abundance of mountain ranges and small rivers that meandered through the landscape. The figure in front was Samei Racky, member of the Kumo no Sansoku and Kitsune Sennin, while his apprentice, 12-year-old Uzumaki Naruto, walked a few feet behind him. Naruto now stood at 5'4", a respectable height for someone his age. His sunshine color hair had grown in length, but not to the point where it had lost its spikiness. The same black mask covered his face from the nose down, only revealing his bright sapphire blue eyes that shined with determination and a spark of mischief. Naruto still wore his rust orange muscle shirt along with his Stormcloud sweatshirt, but had begun to wear black tape around his hands. His shinobi pants looked slightly tattered, but Naruto kept them because they still worked. And along his feet were a pair of black shinobi-style sandals. Across Naruto's back were the twin blades, the kibas, taking to wearing them everywhere just like his late Nichan. Over the years, Naruto's talents for the ninja arts had only grown. With help from the Kitsune clan, his stealth and genjutsu training had given the push he needed. He was now almost like a shadow, slipping in and out of buildings, mostly helping Idazura with a prank of some kind. Though he could still not cast a good genjutsu, he had been able to compromise with recognizing and dispelling C-rank genjutsus. Racky had overall helped him perfect his kenjutsu and taijutsu to the level he saw adequate. While he did not know the style, he would normally have spars with Naruto to help him during sword combat, giving him a small sort of a battle sense. In taijutsu, Naruto had begun learning the advanced katas of Racky's personal style and was well on the way to mastering it. Kyuubi had kept to his word and had begun to teach Naruto to control his Kekkei Genkai by slowly having him create a red stream of lightning between his thumb and index finger. Like Kyuubi had said, Naruto's Futon chakra nature had all but disappeared, only making the slightest of cuts in chakra paper. When it came to adding a taijutsus, the two were deadly together, making up new ways to utilize a jutsu, making it become a diversion or increasing his power. Naruto's personality had also changed a great deal. He insisted on calling Racky-sensei in public, only using his nickname when they were in private. Though Naruto was still the same person, he would now engage in conversations with many of the girls that they met, trying to get past the inner fangirl and meet the true self. Racky and Kyuubi often teased that Racky had somehow corrupted him and he would soon be peaking. This had caused horrible nightmares, almost as bad as when Racky brought him to a brothel for sexual education. "Are we there yet?" Naruto asked, placing his arms behind his head as he looked up at the sky. Racky gritted his teeth. "As I said, the last mile and the mile before that. We will get there when we get there." There was silence for a few minutes before Naruto asked again. "How about He was cut off when he ran into Racky, who had just stopped. Racky looked back and grinned at Naruto. "Yep, we are there, kid. Welcome to Kumogakure, the most beautiful of all the hidden villages." Naruto was awed by what he saw. The city was a collection of tall mountains with a building built into the walls. Large pathways connected the different buildings and large clouds descended atop the tips of the peaks. At the center of the village was a large glass dome, most likely the Raikage's office, along with the center of trade for the town. When Naruto looked down he could see that the base of the mountains were brimming with activity. People walked up and down the streets, engaging in conversations about trade, school, and daily life. "Amazing isn't it, kid?" Racky said, gaining his students' attention. "No matter what I see in this world, this is the most amazing." He then turned to Naruto. "Alright, as soon as we enter that village, there are some rules I want you to go by. Rule 1, try to keep your true abilities secret, deception is the key for a ninja, even from your comrades. Rule 2, do not tell anyone that I am your sensei, to say the least it will cause complications. And rule 3, you will be attending the ninja academy for the next year before you become a full shinobi. Just try and make some friends your age." "Nairo Masuda, why do I need to go to the academy? I have already learned the basics and the history you taught me should keep me up," Naruto asked, confused about why his sensei wanted him to relearn what he had spent his childhood on. Racky scoffed, "I could care less what those weak-ass pencil pushers teach you, but this is a way to learn about your future teammates and other teams. Information is the key." Naruto nodded in confirmation. Racky then turned and began to walk to the gate. "I got to go clear up some things, use your passport to enter the city and do something productive," and with that he disappeared in a puff of smoke. "And what do you think would be a productive way to spend our time?" Naruto thought to his inmate. After a couple seconds, both yelled, "Ramen," and left to find the nearest ramen stand. Due to Kumogakure being a mostly military-operated city, the council was made up of the few clans, the civilians who had monopolies on trader stores, and finally the Raikage, the elders, and the two appointed members, Chiyasa Ayumi and Takashi Manabu, both members of the Kumo no Sansoku. The Yondaime Raikage and rumored to be the fastest man in all of the elemental countries, sighed as he listened to the council talk about the trade agreements and other boring subjects. He could easily be outside with Karabi sparring or lifting weights, but no, he had to be here and just nod or shake his head. He was brought out of his musing when one of the clan members spoke. "Back to our previous discussion from last week, all attempts to find Same Racky, our third senin, have been a failure." "Not surprising," said Takashi, "he may be in Baka, but when it comes to stealth, there are few that can find him. What we need are the hunter nin." Frowned a bit. Takashi and Racky had always been at odds, always trying to outdo the other, whether it is at strength or social status. "That is not an excuse," said another clan member. "He has been missing for 6 years. We have tried again and again to have the hunter nin sent after him, but Raikage-sama refuses. He must be here to fulfill his responsibilities." Chiyasa scoffed, "Right, like he had a choice. You were forcing an apprentice on him. If I had the choices that you were giving him, I would hightail it out of here too." This caused A to give a small smile. Chiyasa was always the median of the team, literally beating the sense into her comrades. She was always a kind and understanding person, while a bit brash. "That was all we could offer," the first civilian member said. "Kumo is outnumbered by the other villages in bloodlines and numbers, and we need to gain every advantage we can. If war breaks out." A finally spoke. "Well, I agree that bloodlines do not make a shinobi, they do help, but with the last attempt my father had on taking the Byakugan, the other villages are cautious of us, which is why we need Racky back, as protection and as someone who can train the next generation," said the second clan member. "I agree," said Takashi. "Racky needs to do his part in passing on his minuscule amount of knowledge. Even if he has to teach a civilian family member, it will show him he should have started earlier." Chiyasa just glared at Takashi but remained silent. Aside, "Alright, fine, though I do not think that it will do much good. I will send a team of hunter nin to find my pupil. How about I just save you the time instead, sensei?" A voice rang through the chamber. The council members quickly began to scan the room until they found Same Racky of the Kumo no Sansoku sitting on the ceiling eating a dango. "Racky-sama, you are here," yelled one of the council members. I couldn't help but smirk. Chiyasa grinned and Takashi showed an aura of disinterest. Racky dropped down to the floor and looked around the room. "Man, if I knew you were going to send the hunter nin I would have waited to come home. Those guys can be so much fun." "That is fine and all, but Racky-san, where have you been?" asked Goro, one of the elders. "Why, I have been doing my part to protect Kumo, my fine wrinkled friend," Racky said, which caused Ig to scowl. "I have been traveling around the continent, making sure that there were absolutely no plots to destroy Kumo, and lucky there were none." "And what did you learn on your travels?" questioned another clan member. Racky leaned in as if he was going to tell a secret. "Raikage's ears only," he said, giving them a foxy grin. Though the council was annoyed by this predicament, I could not help but chuckle. His student had always loved to jerk the council around. Finally, after he had regained his composure, Ig asked, "So have you come back to fulfill your duties as a senin?" Racky just looked at him with a bored gaze. "If my duties include taking one of your snot-nosed brats and training them to be a killing machine, then no." I said it before and I will say it again, those kids do not have that much potential. You have to take one sometime Racky Sukib, said Takashi, putting in his 2 cents. Racky sent a glare at his teammate, and why exactly do I have to do that, Taki-J? Throwing in his nickname to irk him. Takashi scowled at the name, but continued, it is the job of a senin, and we must pass on the mantle to the next generation. Racky sighed because he knew that he was right, fine I'll take one, but not now. I want to have at least a year to relax before hell starts. Bei's eyes widened, that was way too easy, he had seen Racky argue over what to eat for lunch harder than this. A civilian member spoke, so who will you be training? Racky just shrugged, I'll pick next year, but I can tell you that it will not be one of your brats. They chuckled again at how Racky had knocked the pride out of the council members. Okay, it is decided, I said in a loud voice, Racky will pick an apprentice next year. Now if you excuse me, if what my student said is true, we have some things to discuss. He then jumped out of his chair, grabbed Racky and Sunshine to his office, effectively ending the meeting. When the two arrived at A's office, he quickly sent the Anbu out and activated the silencing seals around the office so that they would not be disturbed. A's face then became serious, okay what have you learned, and you also better explain what the fuck just happened in the council chambers. What do you mean sensei? Racky feigned innocence. Don't give me that, arose his voice, I've seen you argue harder for toppings on food, then something that can very well change your life comes along, and you don't even try. Racky gave him a smile, not one of his giant grins, but a true smile. You could always see through me, A-sensei, I won't tell you, but I will help you figure it out, because it has a lot to do with what I learned on my travels. But became intrigued and motioned Racky to continue. Alright, now what happens next year? Racky asked. Pounded his head as he thought, most of the mind games Racky played only seemed hard, but once finding out the answer, seemed almost like child's play. The only things I can think of that happen next year is the annual visit from the daimyo and the academy graduations. Then it all clicked inside the Raikage's head, you already have one don't you? It was more of a statement than a question. Racky grinned before pulling out some forms from his cloak, I knew you would get it, that is why I need you to sign these. He looked over the paperwork, making sure everything was in order, and then put it on his desk, I will make sure that these get through, but there are a lot of blanks. Mainly with the child's family. Racky lost his grin and took a very serious posture, the reason for that is that this kid being on our side could lead to two different futures, and they would be? Question A. One could lead to Kumo, becoming the strongest of the elemental nations, the other could lead to the fourth great shinobi war. Racky put it simply. I was shocked, war was something few joked about, especially those who had lived through it. Who are the boy's parents? He demanded, not taking any of Racky's jokes. Racky sighed, his name is Uzumaki Naruto, but in truth it is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, son of Kushina Uzumaki, the Akai Chishio no Habanero and Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage, and the Konoha no Kiro Senko. But was speechless, even a bit of blood left his face, if those two had a kid, he would be a weapon of mass destruction. Minato Namikaze was the only man he had ever faced who was faster than him. If he had a son, there was no doubt that his son would soon surpass him. How did you find him? I asked. If Naruto really were the son of those two, it would have not been easy to get him. I found him when he was 6, crucified to a cross a couple of miles outside of Konoha, said Racky with a bit of malice in his voice. This shocked A again, why would they do that? It makes no sense. Why would they leave the hero of Konoha's son out in the woods to die? I was horrified and disgusted that villagers would even do such a thing to a child. Sensei, Racky said, gaining his teacher's full attention, he's like Kurabi, only I think he has had it much worse. That explained it, the boy was a Jinchuriki, and they were normally hated because of what they held. But in Kumo, Kurabi had changed all that, only leaving a bit of caution when dealing with him or their other Jinchuriki, Nai Yujido, Jinchuriki of the Nibi no Nekomata. After A had regained his composure, he asked, how is Konoha dealing with all this? Honestly they still celebrate his death, said Racky still angered about how they treated his pupil, it seems that he was all alone there and only had a few friends, namely the Hokage, and a small raiment stand. Aside, so now Kumo is the owner of 3 Jinchuriki. You were right about the two possibilities we have. Racky nodded, I have brought him back to experience the last year of school and get some friends. Dude moving around a lot, he has never known that many people his age. I will keep his status and heritage a secret, but I will inform Kurabi about his status so they could begin training to harness the Kyuubi, said A as he moved to sit at his desk. I was going to ask you to do that anyways, Racky said as he made to leave. Racky, A called out, Racky stopped mid-step, this boy, Naruto, how good is he? Racky turned around to face his teacher and shot him a small grin, to be honest, in a couple of years, he may be taking that hat from you sensei, he has always had a fixation for becoming a Kage, and with that, Racky disappeared in a puff of smoke. He chuckled, well Naruto, welcome to Kumo he thought as he got back to the losing battle, paperwork. God damn it where is it? Yelled Naruto as he trudged through the busy streets of Kumo. He had been searching for a ramen stand for close to 2 hours and had so far come up with nothing. All he had found was the academy, which he filed under remember later, and the red light district, where his mask had fallen off, giving the woman there a good look at his face. That was a long hour of running and hiding, thought Naruto as he continued to look for the ramen stand. I still think that you should have gotten caught, said Kyuubi. If you are gay, kid, I don't care if it does kill me, I will rip you to shreds. Naruto was brought out of his conversation with his inner demon when he heard a couple of grunts coming from behind him. When he turned, he saw a young woman, most likely 13 or 14, carrying a bit too many bags of groceries. She had light gray hair that fell down her back and a pair of B-cups that were barely visible underneath her apron. Now Naruto, being the gentleman he was, could not let her carry all of those back to wherever she was going on her own. Do you need some help, miss? He asked. The woman looked up to see Naruto standing next to her. She had emerald green eyes, which almost distracted Naruto enough to not hear her answer. If it would not be too much trouble, she asked a bit sheepishly. Naruto gave her an eye smile. It would be no problem at all. She blushed at the eye smile and let him remove 2 of the bags from her arms. Naruto followed her for a minute in silence before he asked, I'm sorry, but I never got your name. She turned her head around and smiled at him. Sorry, my name is Aya, and your name is? Uzumaki Naruto, he said as he continued to follow the teen through the alleyways. So Naruto-kun, you new to town? She asked, trying to find out a bit more on the boy. Naruto gave a nervous laugh. Is it that easy to tell? Aya giggled, yep, especially when you don't know who I am. Almost everyone in Kumo know about my father's stand and me. Naruto raised his eyebrow to ask what type of stand it was, but was cut off when Aya said that they were there. They walked into a door with a sign over it that said, Meiho no Aji, that led into a carved-out cave. There were many rugs on the ground and booths around the rim. There was a multitude of people having a good time. He followed Aya behind the counter and helped her put the ingredients away. So what is it you make here? He asked, curious about what would attract this many people. Well, we have a lot of foods, said Aya as she turned her back to Naruto to put away some of the vegetables. We have dangos, soups, salads, udon, but our biggest seller is our ramen. She stopped putting away the food when she heard something drop. Aya looked at Naruto to find that he was frozen with wide eyes. She was about to ask what was wrong when he disappeared and reappeared right next to her and began to give Aya the strongest hug of her life. I knew it was fate. Naruto screamed in joy after he was done hugging Aya, who was blushing like a tomato after feeling what Naruto really had under his shirt. So ripped, she thought, but was soon brought back to reality to see Naruto had moved to the front of the counter and was sitting on one of the chairs. Well, seeing that you say the ramen is the most popular, I think I will need about 7 bowls to try, he said as he grinned underneath his mask. Aya had recovered from her daydream and was giggling at Naruto's antics. Alright, I'll get you a bowl, and it will be on the house for helping me with the groceries. A few minutes later, she came out of the kitchen with a bowl of steaming hot ramen. When she placed the bowl in front of Naruto, he was about to dig in, but saw that Aya had pulled out a small camera from under the table. What is that for? He asked as he watched her set it up. Aya gave him a smirk, little tradition I have here, and I take pictures of the faces of people who try our ramen for the first time. So take off that mask and enjoy. Naruto was about to decline the request, but his stomach was growling for ramen, so without hesitation, he pulled down his mask and took a heavenly sniff of the meal before him. Aya could hardly believe what she was seeing. Most people wore a mask to cover up something that they are ashamed of, but his face only brought one word to her mind, hot. The whiskers alone made her want to tie up the boy and leave him in her room. Aya almost forgot what she was doing until she remembered what she was here to do. When Naruto took the first bite, he knew he was in heaven. The ramen was one of the best he had ever tasted, being a very close second to the Ichirikas and Konoha. Marry her, kid, yelled Kyuubi. If you do, all of this delicious food will be ours for free. Naruto's lips spread into a large foxy grin while his eyes rolled to the ceiling. He was only brought back when he heard the click of the camera and a few giggles. Aya was trying to keep herself from bursting with laughter. The face Naruto had made was going to be a masterpiece in her collection. That was by far the funniest reaction I have seen so far, Aya got out between giggles. Naruto pouted, causing him to look even more adorable, but quickly forgot about what she had said and went back to the delicious meal. After finishing 10 bowls in under an hour, which according to Aya was a record, he finally slowed down enough to speak. That, said Naruto as he patted his stomach, was one of the most delicious things I have ever eaten. You are an excellent cook, Aya-chan. Aya blushed at the additional suffix. Thank you, Naruto-kun, but what are you doing in Kumo? Naruto gave her a foxy grin, which seemed to make a little blood flow to her cheeks. I came here to join the ninja academy really, said Aya, getting a bit more interested. I know some people who go there. I could introduce you if you'd like, and if you need any information about anyone you meet, just ask me. Giving her a smile, Naruto pulled up his mask to its original position, much to Aya's disappointment. That would be great, Aya-chan, I better get going, but where is the bathroom? Aya pointed down the hall, 2 doors on your left she said. Naruto gave her a sheepish look while scratching the back of his head. This gave Aya the chance to take another picture. Ops, sorry finger slipped, she pretended to act embarrassed. Naruto just waved it off and walked to find the bathroom. When he was gone, Aya took out the photograph and looked at it. Yep, this is defiantly going in my private collection she said with a giggle. Just then the door to the restaurant opened, making Aya scramble to hide the photo. In the entrance were Amoy and Samui. Heyo Amoy-san, Samui-chan, what can I get you? Aya asked as the two got closer to the counter. Amoy had dark skin with short white spiky hair and had a sucker sticking out of his mouth. He wore a grey overlong shirt with red bandage and shin guards, along with black shinobi-style pants. Samui had fair skin, blonde hair that reached down to her shoulders. Her chest easily matched Aya's, being close to B cups and wore a standard Kumo Kunoichi uniform, except with a mesh undershirt and a low-cut skirt. I am fine Aya-san, we just came to relax a bit while Yujito is off doing one of her revenge pranks said Samui, who had moved her hands to her shoulders and began to rub them. Damn these back pains, she muttered. Amoy was still staring at the menu, maybe I'll have some dangos. But what if I get stomach pains and have to go to the hospital, where a pretty nurse will saw that I only have a few days to live. But if he was cut off by Aya hitting him with a spoon. Just pick one Amoy, I feel the carry should be doing this. Where is she anyways? Amoy rubbed the new bump on his head, helping out Yujito. Aya made an O with her mouth before it morphed into a smirk. Oh, so you two are on a date I see. Ah, young love, I am so glad I don't have to deal with the dating scene. Nope, all I need is my soulmate and I have found him. Both Amoy and Samui rolled their eyes at her tease. So who is the one this week? It would be easier to believe if you didn't have a new one every week, said Samui as she stopped rubbing her shoulders. Aya sighed and looked off dreamily into space. Oh, he is so kind, he helped me carry my groceries back to the store today, then he complimented me on my cooking, oh and his body, it is the body of a god, I got a good feel of it and I can tell you he is ripped. Then his face is the most adorable thing I have ever seen. He has these 3 little birthmarks on each cheek that look like whiskers. Makes you want to glomp him right there. Amoy looked at Samui for a translation, who sighed, basically, the man was nice to her, likes the food here, and is hot, she said in a stoic voice. Amoy nodded, then looked back to Aya, so where is your soulmate? He asked looking around the restaurant. Aya was startled out of her daydream and began to look around. He should be re-Ida there he is. Finally pointing at a masked blonde who had just exited the bathroom. The blonde boy walked up to Aya, thanks for the meal Aya-chan, I am definitely coming back here, he said in a jovial tone. My pleasure Naruto-kun, but before you go, I want you to meet some of my friends. Aya motioned to Samui and Amoy. This is Samui and Amoy, they will also be attending the Ninja Academy. Guys, this is Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto gave a wave to the pair, who both was still analyzing him. As Samui looked him over, she could tell that Aya had been right about him being cute, though she could not see his face. He had medium-length blonde hair like her, but his was a bit more yellow and still retained some of the spikiness. His eyes were a much brighter blue than hers, sparkling with hints of kindness and caring. Amoy was the first to respond, nice to meet you Uzumaki-san, at first I thought you were going to be mean, and I would have to defeat you in front of everybody, causing your hate to slowly build up inside of you until it exploded. A large sweat drop rolled down Naruto's forehead. Wow, he really overthinks things, said the Kyuubi, as Naruto could only mentally nod his head. Naruto then looked around the restaurant and then turned back to Amoy, well none of that has happened so far, so I think we are good. Also call me Naruto, I have never been big on formalities. Amoy gave a smile, deciding that he liked this guy, and held out his fist, which Naruto tapped with his own. Samui then gave a wave back to Naruto, so you are going to be in our graduating class. We should at least get you up to speed on what we have been doing, she said. Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly and headed to a booth in the back with Samui and Amoy. Aya still had to work, so she gave a wave and went back to serving customers. When they arrived, Amoy asked, Naruto, what is with that face mask? Naruto gave him a grin underneath his mask, personal protection, he said trying to end it right there. I don't really like people keeping secrets from me, said Samui, who had narrowed her eyes a bit, I think that we at least deserve to see your face as payment for telling you about the academy. Naruto wanted to deny the deal, but he really needed to know about the school. Information is the key he thought, and after a sigh, he removed his mask. Samui couldn't help but let a bit of blood run to her cheeks. Naruto was exactly what Aya had said, hot. The whisker marks made him look a bit wild, and Samui had to stop herself from petting them. Samui-san, are you blushing? Asked Amoy as if it were the craziest thing in the world. And no. She quickly stuttered out, regaining her composure. Amoy then looked at Naruto, I see why you call it personal protection, to make Samui blush, those whiskers must be a real turn on. I could only imagine what would happen if a fangirl saw you. Naruto paled at the thought and just silently nodded, hoping that no fangirl did ever see him without his mask. So what do you have to tell me, he asked, quickly trying to get the new thoughts of being chased by mobs of fangirls out of his mind. There is only a few things you really need to know, said Samui, who had regained her stoic tone. Osamu-sensei is a bit of a stickler to the basics, but if you just get what he is talking about, you will do fine. The class is basically divided into two sides, one for the Nico and Akami, the other for the Kitsune. Naruto raised his eyebrow. Those are the summons that each of the Kumo no Sansoku use. Chiyasa Ayumi is the Nico Senin, Takashi Manabu is the Akamis, and Racky Sameu is the Kitsune Senin. Amoy nodded, that's right, the Nico and Akami side supports Takashi and Chiyasa, while the other supports Racky. Why would they need that? Naruto asked, still confused. The three Senin are supposed to be a team, right? Samui frowned a bit, yes, and they still are, but the question the two sides are arguing is who is the leader of the team, Racky or Takashi. From what the Jonins have said, those two have been at odds. While many see Takashi as the smarter one, Racky is considered to be the strongest shinobi and is supposed to have hundreds of contacts in lots of countries. Naruto nodded in understanding. Which side are you on? He asked, unsure on whether he should root for his sensei or the other guy. Me, Yujito, Aya, Amoy, Kari, and a few others support Racky, but that is mostly because Kurabi, the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, think so, said Samui as she began to massage her shoulders again. Alright, anything else? Naruto asked, still a bit curious about the debate on whom was the leader of the Kumo no Sansoku. Just some minor things, said Amoy, as he unwrapped another sucker to stick in his mouth. Yujito, apprentice of Kurabi, is also a Jinchuriki, so don't mess with her. We won't mess with you. He sent a glare at Naruto, who just nodded. He knew what it was like to be despised for no good reason. Also, don't get between her and Yuriko Sango. She is the apprentice of Chiyasa, and while her master may be kind, she is definitely spoiled rotten and the number one fangirl for Naoki Minoru, head of the Akami and Nico side, and also the apprentice of Takashi. He is kind of an arrogant brat, so just try to ignore him. What about the apprentice of Racky? Naruto asked, feigning ignorance. There isn't one, Samui put it curtly as she finished her self-massage. When they tried to push one on him a couple of years ago, he ran for it, but I guess a lot of people would if they had the choices he did. Naruto sighed again and looked at the clock. Well, I better be getting to the inn, thanks for the help, see you tomorrow. I guess he stood up and reattached his mask. Amoy gave him a fist bump and Samui was about to stand up as well when her foot caught onto the leg of the table and began to fall. On instinct, Naruto went to catch her, grabbing her just before she hit the ground. They stayed like that for a few moments before they both realized the position that they were in and quickly separated. Thanks, Samui said quietly, a light blush apparent on her face. And no problem, Naruto responded, thanking Kami that his mask was on, otherwise she would have seen his blush. Well, I better go, later Amoy, see ya Samui-chan, and with that Naruto left the restaurant. As soon as he was gone, Aya came up with a smirk on her face. What was that, Samui? You trying to feel up my future boyfriend? Him? Samui quickly regained her composure and gave a blank stare to Aya. You have to start dating him before he can be your boyfriend. Aya's grin grew a bit larger and the fall. Samui stiffened a bit. I was just confirming if everything you said about him was true. Aya's grin looked like it was going to split her face. She said in a sing-song voice. Samui looked at her feet, trying to hide the small blush forming on her face. You were right, she said, leaving a shocked Amoy and Aya rolling on the floor laughing. Naruto walked down the street to the inn he was staying at. Due to his morning of searching for ramen, he had ended up going around most of the city and knew a general map of the area. It was night when he had finally left the restaurant. He was still wondering about the argument going on and about the other two Jinchuriki. Hey Kyuubi, how is the Hachibi? He thought to his mindscape. Well, when I knew him, he was wild and crazy on the outside, while in private he could act calm and relaxed, easily carrying on a conversation, said Kyuubi as prepared to sleep. And what about the other one? Any idea about who the other Jinchuriki holds? Naruto asked again. Your guess is as good as mine, kid, but if I had to, the only Biju that I know of that disappeared close to here was the Nibi, and trust me kid, she is a true sexual demon. Imagine all of the comments I make about women, then multiply it by 1,000. That is what it is like to be her container, Kyuubi said. His tone then began a bit more frightful, and if you are unlucky enough to be chosen to be her mate, then there is few things that can stop her. Believe me, I know. Kyuubi shivered at the memory. Naruto waited for anything else, but when he heard nothing, he sighed. Well, I guess we will just have to see it ourselves. The sun peeked through the shades of Naruto's room, the rays settling on his face. Naruto tried to keep his eyes closed, but it was all for naught as he reluctantly left his peaceful slumber. He pushed himself up and surveyed his surroundings. He was in a small apartment, complete with a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and bath. The coloring was modest and even, and the tables and chairs did not have a speck of dust on them. Naruto moved his focus to a small nightstand. 6:30 Naruto thought as he groggily rose from bed, 2 whole hours until the academy starts. Seeing that he was not going back to sleep anytime soon, Naruto rose from his bed and stumbled into the bathroom. He had just set the shower to the perfect temperature and was about to step in when he heard the heavy snores coming from inside his head. Prankster sighed kicking in, Naruto blasted the water temperature to the coldest it could go. Bracing himself, he entered the spray of icy water. Cold. Kyuubi screamed, woken from his slumber by the feeling of ice-cold water all over his body. Naruto gave a tired chuckle, then quickly returned the water to its previous temp to enjoy his shower. "You dick," said Kyuubi, clearly not happy about the manner in which he had woken up. "I'm not apologizing," thought Naruto back to the fox, "that was the most fun I have had in a while. I will get revenge starting now," said Kyuubi as he started to send an image of when Naruto had caught Racky and an escort together. The thought of a naked Racky instantly widened Naruto's eyes in horror. "My eyes. Oh dear Kami, my eyes are burning," he screamed, covering his face with his hands. Kyuubi laughed at his container's reaction, "Just remember, you deserved that one." When Naruto had recovered, he proceeded to wonder about his first day at the academy. From the people he had met so far, Samui and Amoy seemed to be trustworthy people and good shinobi in training. However, their opinions on his other classmates were interesting to say the least, especially the 2 apprentices in Jinchuriki. Racky had never said that much about his teammates. Whenever the question was brought up, he would ignore it, bring up a new subject, or, if he had any, throw some sharp kunai at Naruto. Naruto had learned very quickly that this was a sore subject for him. The only thing he had been able to learn about them was that Takashi was a golden asshole and that Chiasa was a beautiful brute, but other than that, Racky was silent about them. Naruto respected his choice to not want to talk about them, just like Racky respected Naruto's wish to not talk about his life in Konoha. Naruto's eyes dimmed a bit, he had tried to keep all thoughts of Konoha out of his head, excluding Jiji and the Ichirikas of course. When it came to the villagers, Naruto felt irritated. Not angry or filled with rage, just irritated, like it was a small bug that would never leave you alone. Naruto knew that his heritage did not come from Konoha, he was in Uzumaki, a survivor of a once powerful clan. The clan so powerful that it had its own hidden village, Uzushiogakure, best known for their few ninjutsu skills and their notoriously long lives. Though Naruto knew of his clan's ties to Konoha, he had long since decided that was his past and that Kumo was his future. Naruto soon was snapped out of his train of thought when he realized that he had been in the shower for close to 45 minutes. He turned off the water and began to start his daily routine. When Naruto had exited the bathroom, he quickly made some instant ramen and did some stretches while waiting. When the ramen was done, Naruto wolfed it down and then proceeded to make 3 more cups, which were eaten at similar speeds. As Naruto was about to leave his room, he noticed a small letter on the counter. He went over to examine it, only to find the word kid written on it. Curious, Naruto opened the letter to see why his master had written him, other than just coming to talk. Hit. "Sorry I can't do this personally, but if the villagers found out that I was teaching you, they would go ballistic. If you haven't already found out, the council, in all its glory, tried to push an apprentice on me a couple of years ago. The choices I had were shitty to none, so I hightailed it out of there. I eventually met you and took you under my wing, but people will not take kindly to a kid from another village being the apprentice to one of the seinen. So, here on out, I need you to continue training whenever you can. Just do your warm-ups and try to master some of the simpler jutsus you know without hand signs. I don't really care what you do in the academy, but for Kami's sakes, make some friends. You really need to know people your own age group. And who knows, you might even find a stunning young girl to play with." Racky drew himself, giving a pervy grin. "The same rules apply from what I told you yesterday, and only summon if you need to. Donna, Racky, PS. You need to come meet the Raikage when classes are over. DPS. Don't prank your teacher too badly, we need them sort of. DPPS. The store to the right of the inn you are staying at serves the best tea in the mornings." Naruto sighed and burned the note with a simple Kaiten jutsu. "I have a feeling this is going to be a boring year," he thought to himself as he locked the door to his room and walked off to find the store Racky had told him about. Vegito gave a loud yawn, so tired. She whined as she moved to lay on a row of desks. Samui sighed, "I bet you are, after you spent all night trying to break into Naoki's house for one of your revenge pranks. Why did you even try when you know that his clan's compound is one of the most secure in the village?" Vegito, Samui, Amoy and Carrie were sitting around a row of desks in the upper right corner of the class near the window. Amoy and Samui wore the same clothes they did the day before. Vegito had fair skin, long braided blonde hair like Samui's, and a pair of cat-like black eyes. She had small A cups that were concealed under a short-sleeved purple and black blouse. She had on black ninja pants with cloud outlines on the bottom and purple fingerless gloves. Her arms were covered with ninja tape and also a red belt around her waist. Fairy had dark skin with red hair and amber eyes and yellow earrings and a white bandana that kept her hair down. She wore a similar uniform to Samui, but hers had frills on the neck and she had thigh-high boots. "We got past the first wall," protested Carrie as she struggled to keep her head up. If Cat Eyes here didn't attract the smell of the guard dogs, that bastard would have woken up completely hairless. Yujito shot Carrie a quick glare before turning back to Samui, "Though it's not like you would ever see the shit he does," she said in an irritated tone, "that jerk wouldn't harm a fly." If Samui was there to watch him, Samui had been the apple of Naoki's affection since the second year of the academy. She was one of the most level-headed girls in the class and also not one of his many fangirls. It seemed that Naoki liked a challenge. Yujito was actually a bit jealous of Samui in that aspect. Sure, Samui had always turned down any date thrown at her, but at least she was getting asked. No one wanted to even come close to Yujito because of her Jinchuriki status, and those who did only wanted to be the first to claim the demon bitch. "Oh, cheer up kitten," said Nibi, the two-tailed beast, "there must be a man out there who will look past what you are. And if not, having mind-blowing sex with anyone you want is not a sad lifestyle. I remember when I got with these four Nibi," interrupted Yujito as she tried to make the blush on her face recede. She looked at her friends and noticed that Samui seemed to be searching for someone. "Who are you looking for?" Yujito asked. Samui stiffened. "No one," she curtly responded. "She is probably looking for Naruto." Amoy had started to say but was cut off when Samui hit him over the head. This piqued Yujito's interests even further. "Who's Naruto?" Amoy rubbed the new lump on his head. "He is a kid we met while you two were trying to prank Naoki. He said he was joining the academy today." Yujito and Karui looked over at Samui, who was glaring at Amoy. They both got a teasing grin on their faces. "Oh, does Samui have a crush on the new kid?" Yujito said with a grin. "I think so, and I thought she just shot everyone else down because she played for the other team," added Karui with a giggle. Samui looked away and pointed her nose high with a snort, but a light blush was present. "I do not have a crush on Naruto-san." Amoy, who had popped another sucker into his mouth, had a puzzled expression on his face. "Then why did you blush when you saw Naruto without his mask?" This time Amoy had to dodge a couple of kunai that skimmed the top of his hair. Yujito and Karui wore gobsmacked expressions. "Are you serious?" Yujito finally asked, "Are we talking about the same person here or am I losing my hearing? Cause I think you just said." Samui blushed at a boy. Amoy nodded. "I was as surprised as you." This got Yujito thinking, "Hey Nibi, why don't we get that mask off of the Naruto kid so we can see what your stoic friend saw?" "Absolutely kitten, I am so glad my devious eye had rubbed off on you," said Nibi, who was giving her container a cat-like grin. Just as Yujito started to plan mission, unmask Samui's crush, Osamu-sensei walked in to begin the lesson. About an hour into the lecture, Yujito had almost fallen asleep when the class heard a knock at the door. Osamu paused and walked to open the door. Standing there was Naruto wearing his mask, rubbing the back of his sheepishly while holding a cup of tea. "I'm late, right?" he asked. Osamu was perplexed. "Yes, you must be the new student starting today. What were you doing that made you an entire hour late?" Naruto just raised up the cup of tea. "It's really good, I had to get a couple of cups." A few of the class giggled and Osamu gave an annoyed sigh. "Alright, well let's hope that this does not become a daily occurrence. Go and introduce yourself to the class." Naruto nodded then walked up to the center of the room. "Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, I like ramen, training, and this tea." He took a sip. "How is this so good?" he asked himself. Lots of the students got a large teardrop on their foreheads. Is he really that stupid? Most of the class asked themselves. Only Samui and Amoy knew that he was masking his true strength, while Yujito made a note to find out where he got the tea. "Very well Naruto, go sit next to Amoy." Naruto nodded and moved up the stairs and took his place by Amoy, who he greeted with a fist bump. Yujito was currently observing the new student. He looks good from here kitten," said Nibi. "Nice bright shining eyes, Samui likes him, so you know he is strong." Osamu-sensei had taken a seat at his desk, only to stand up later with the seat glued to his rear, making the class to laugh, and a prankster to boot. "Oh, I just know you are made for each other kitten. Why don't you ditch class so you can take him to your room to ride his Nibi?" screamed Yujito at her demon, using all of her willpower to keep a blush down. After Osamu, with the help of some students, gotten the seat off of his pants, continued his lecture from where it had been interrupted, which both Naruto and Yujito slept through. The bell finally rang, signifying the break. As the class entered the school grounds, which was covered with dirt except for some trees near the corners of the buildings, Naruto went off to find Samui and Amoy. He finally found them along with a redhead and another blonde, relaxing around an enclave of rocks. He walked up and smiled under his mask as he waved to Samui. Yujito was sitting on top of one of the rocks and Samui, Karui and Amoy were leaning against some of the smaller rocks. "Hello Naruto-san." Samui was the first to acknowledge his presence. He gave her an eye smile. "Hello Sami-chan, how have you been?" Yujiro snickered at Samui's nickname, while Samui was slightly glaring at Naruto. "When did I give you permission to call me that?" She less asked more demanded. Naruto just kept smiling at her. 1. You gave me the nickname Naruto-san when I asked you to call me Naruto, so I am just giving you a nickname in return. 2. Sami-chan is just so easy to say, and 3. The face to make is adorable when I call you it. Samui was about to throw one of the rocks at him when she heard the first 2 reasons, but when she heard the third, she went wide-eyed and a small blush appeared on her face. She tried to come up with a retort, but her brain had shut down for a bit, so all she did was stand there. Yujiro was watching the scene play out and decided to make her presence known. "Now that is impressive," she said as she hopped off the boulder, getting Samui to blush once is an accomplishment, twice as legendary. Naruto tilted his head slightly in confusion, both Yujiro and Samui had to hold in a scream of kawaii, but Nibi didn't. "Kawaii, that is adorable. Grab him, kitten, before your friend notices he is gone." Yujiro ignored Nibi for the moment and put out her hand. "I'm Yujiro, the redhead is Kari," who nodded at Naruto, "and I am guessing you already know Amoy and Sami-chan." She had purposely put Samui's new nickname in for her own enjoyment, as the other blonde girl, now recovered, shot her a deathly glare. Naruto smiled at her and grasped her hand in a shake. "Uzumaki Naruto, but just call me Naruto." Yujiro smiled. "What's with the mask?" she asked. "Got something you need to hide under there?" Naruto's eyes seemed to twinkle with mischief. "I'll tell you what I told Amoy and Samui. It's for personal protection." Yujiro gave him the puppy, or in her case, kitty cat eyes. They seemed to glow with sadness, but Samui and Amoy both got to see, she said in a cute voice. Naruto was having trouble focusing on anything else but her eyes. She looked so sad, he thought, as his hand twitched towards his mask. "Don't do it, kid," yelled Kyuubi. "I am sure this is Nibi now. If you let her get to you, soon everything you hold near and dear will be hers for the taking. I made the same mistake that you are about to make, so please, for love of Kami, resist." Kyuubi's rant seemed to snap Naruto out of the trance and just shook his head. "I am sorry, Yujiro-san, but they used it as payment for telling me about the academy. I cannot show you, good kid, good. Now just keep it up," urged the Kyuubi. Yujiro's eyes began to slightly water, causing Naruto's resolve to weaken. No, don't cry yet, I cannot show you yet," he quickly said, not wanting to make the girl cry. It was one of his weaknesses. "You're fucking hopeless," sighed the Kyuubi from his cage. Yujiro's expression changed instantly, from brink of tears to wildly grinning. "Great, so when is yet?" she asked. Thinking quickly, Naruto began to do what any great man would do when caught in a position like this, tell half the truth. "Well, you see, if people knew my true identity, it could cause a lot of unwanted problems. So I need to be sure only a select few know," he said. It was not like he was lying. If Konoha did find out he was alive and in Kumo, they would with no doubt send an army to capture or kill him. "Nice save, kid," said Kyuubi. "Really? No, I was being sarcastic." Even though Yujiro was smiling on the outside, she was irked on the inside. Why didn't that work, she thought. I have used that move on Karabi-sensei and Aoji hundreds of times, and it has worked perfectly. "I don't know what happened, kitten," added Nibi. "I have used my technique for much greater things than that." Either he has heard of it before, which I find hard to believe, or what he says is true, that this is very important. But that only makes me want to know more. After Yujiro finished scheming with Nibi, she continued to act as if nothing was wrong. "Oh, you are so easy," she got in close. "Having you around is going to be fun, and also you can Samui blush, which is a bonus." Naruto slowly nodded, still a bit confused about some of what Yujiro had said. What does she mean, making Sami-chan blush, he thought. In his cage, Kyuubi banged his head against the bars, cursing Kami for giving him such an oblivious container. "Anyway," said Samui, who was still a bit pissed about the Sami-chan comment, "what do you think of the class, Naruto?" "It's really nice, Sami-chan," electing a smirk from Yujiro and a scowl from Samui. "The students seem fine if you don't mess with them. The teacher is smart but gullible, meaning lots of fun pranks in the future, and he doesn't seem to care if I come in late." He was about to continue, but a rock flew past his face, skimming the cloth of his mask. The group turned to see 2 figures, one boy and one girl, standing a few feet away. The boy had light-toned skin, with messy brown hair and dull brown eyes. He wore a miniature Kumo Anbu getup, with the only exception being that all of the armor had the faintest color of red. The girl was, in Naruto's opinion, quite beautiful. She had captivating red eyes, black hair that reached down her back, and a small deceptive smile. Her outfit consisted of white shinobi-style pants, a sleeveless crimson tank top, with 1 tan shawls moving across her waist, and on her left arm was a fishnet glove. As soon as the 2 arrived, the mood instantly changed. Samui gave them a slight glare. Amoy had moved into a fighting stance, and Kari and Yujiro were growling and looking like they were about to tear the kids to shreds. The 2 sides did not move or speak a word for 2 whole minutes, so Naruto decided to break the tension. "You know, it is appropriate to know the names of the people throwing rocks at you," he said with an eyes smile. The girl gave a smirk, well how thoughtful, and here I thought that you had no class for hanging out around them. My name is Sango Yuriko, apprentice of the Nikko Sennin, and my handsome friend here is Minoru Naoki, apprentice of the Akami Sennin, who just gave a bored stare at the blonde boy. Naruto gave a small wave, Uzumaki Naruto, so what are you two doing? Probably Yuriko Shofu been following Naoki team with hopes of pencil dick asking her out, yelled Yujito. Yuriko scowled, but then quickly brought it back to a smirk, all Nico know me, trying to keep your new friend. As soon as he finds out what you are, he will leave, like all the rest. Yujito flinched, but stood her ground. Yuriko turned back to Naruto, do you know Naruto-kun, your little friend here is the Nibi no Nekomata, a giant fire-breathing cat who is bent on death and destruction. Why hang out with Nico no Mi and her low-class friends, when you can be with normal people like us? Naruto turned to look at Yujito, who flinched under his gaze. Karui, Samui and Amoy all waited for his answer, but he just kept observing Yujito. After 2 minutes, he looked back, she doesn't look like a cat, Yujito breathed a sigh of relief, and Nibi smiled, see kitten, I told you there were people out there who could see the truth. And another good thing is that he is not bad looking either. Samui, Amoy and Karui, seeing that Naruto was not a threat to their friend, moved their gaze back to Yuriko and Naoki, who looked surprised to say the least. The only thing that looks cat-like one Yujito are her eyes, and they look pretty cute, Naruto continued, causing Yujito to blush. And above all, he said as he narrowed his eyes, if you say she is the Nibi, you must not be very smart. When we seal a kunai into a scroll, does the scroll become a kunai? No it does not, meaning that Yujito is the container rather than the beast. Yuriko, who had recovered, was glaring at the blonde, fine, all we do is try to help you and set you on the right path, but if you want to ignore our advice then go right ahead. Come on Naoki-kun. She started to walk away, but noticed that Naoki wasn't following her. He just moved his gaze to Samui, you haven't accepted my invitation for a date Samui-san, he said in a bland voice, betraying no emotion. Samui just replied with an equally bland tone, I am sorry, Naoki-san, but I must decline your request. Why? He asked, raising his eyebrow, my clan and one of the only clans our village possesses, many would be honored to find a way into our clan, and when I am here offering you a way in, you decline. I said no Naoki, she said again, even though this one was a bit louder. Naoki half scowled, half glared, again why? You do know of my clan's control, and being a clan heir, I could protect you and your friends from any problems. Naruto, deciding that he had enough, said in a light tone, you know flowers and chocolate work a lot better than threats. Naoki turned to glare at Naruto, and for a moment his own killer intent laced it. I do not believe I asked for your opinion Naruto-san, he said blandly. Naruto shrugged, and I believe I heard Sami-chan say no, so I guess both of us are in the wrong. Naoki's eyes widened a bit at the Sami-chan comment, but then quickly regained his composure. I see. Well I must be off, but I will enjoy sparring with you in the future Naruto-san he said, and began to walk away, in the other direction as Yuriko, who ran to catch up with her true love. After the duo had left, Karui started to laugh, did you see that bastard's face? I swear I have never seen him show that much emotion in my life. Amoy popped another sucker in his mouth, why did he leave so quickly? Maybe he is going because it hurts his face to change expression so much. Or maybe he is out plotting his revenge. Or maybe he did not get to finish because Karui had brought her fist down on his head. Shut up Amoy Baka, just be happy we won this one. Naruto smiled at his new friends, perhaps this won't be such a boring year he thought to himself. He was brought back to reality by Yujito shaking his shoulder. Thanks, she said as she watched Amoy and Karui fight, while Samui just shook her head, for standing up for us, most people as soon as they hear of one of the Biju, would have just walked away. But you didn't, I like that. Naruto gave an eye smile to Yujito, think nothing of it, besides they are not out of the woods, yet Yujito gave him a curious look, what do you mean? She asked. Naruto's eyes sparkled with mischief as he scribbled an address on a stray piece of paper, before giving it to her, well that could mean a lot of things, but I will need your help, just meet me at this place at 8 p.m. If I am going to get those two, I will need your help to do it. Naruto turned and started to walk away. Later Yugi-chan Yujito smiled with a light blush tinting her cheeks. Later Naruto-kun she said. Insider Silanibi was watching the boy walk away. A nice ass, I have an idea, how about you follow him, and when he gets near one of the closets, push him and yourself in, so you can suck on his nibi. It was an hour after school, and Naruto was standing in front of two large dark-toned muscular men, and Racky in the Raikage's office. The man at the desk had white combed back hair and wore the Raikage hat on his head. He wore a golden belt and had a stern gaze. The other man also had white hair and a goatee. He had on a white forehead protector with the Kumo symbol, along with a pair of black shades. He had on a Jonin flak jacket and a red rope around his waist, with 7 swords strapped to his back. So you must be the boy from Konoha, Naruto was it, the man at the desk started, my name is A, but you can just call me Raikage-sama, either one will do. I don't care, never been one for formalities. Naruto gave a small smile under his mask, he liked this guy already. But then pointed to the man on his left, this is Kurabi, the Jinchuriki of Hachibi, and from now on, your sensei in controlling the Kyuubi's chakra. Kurabi gave Naruto a grin and held out his fist, how you doing little nine, we go and make it so you can use the nine tails just fine, yeah. Both Racky and Kurabi got large sweat drops on their heads, and Naruto gave a nervous chuckle. Kid, if you ever start doing that, I don't care if I die, I will kill you. Regaining his composure, Naruto responded to his fist bump, sounds fine Kurabi-sensei, when do we start? Meet me at 10 at the hills, but you better be ready to pay the bills. He then disappeared in a puff of smoke. There was silence for a bit before Naruto yelled, does anyone know what he just said? Racky just shrugged, don't look at me, I haven't heard that man rap for years, I am out of practice. Both looked at A, who sighed, he wants you to meet him at 10 tomorrow on the outskirts of the city. Racky and Naruto nodded in understanding as it continued, also it is very important that your status as a Jinchuriki stays hidden. Naruto, that is why I am placing it as an S-ranked military secret. Not even the council or any of the other senin will know besides Racky, Kurabi, and myself. That's right kid, and I know you are just dying to tell everyone how you are the apprentice of such a handsome, stunning and thoughtful man such as me, but you must resist, said Racky, putting his arm around Naruto's shoulder. Naruto pushed the arm off, I don't really think I want the women of Kumo relating me to you, Masuda. Racky face faulted and 8 pounded his desk in laughter, haha, now that is a name that fits my student. Racky looked glumly at the floor before a brilliant idea popped into his head. He gave a devilish fox grin at A, who had stopped laughing when he saw it. That grin always meant trouble. Well, I did learn it all from you now sensei, he began, getting his students' attention, remember Makoto sensei? Or Rika-san? Them and the hundreds more you peaked on. I am surprised I am not any worse. A was confused, what could Racky have to gain by saying all this? His questions were answered when Naruto was walking out the door, alright you guys take care of that, later Masuda, later Densetsu. A threw a chair at Naruto, but he was already out the door. Racky was now the one laughing, sucks for you sensei, as soon as he gives you a name, you're labeled for life. A swung a punch at Racky, who used a kawarimi with a chair, which was destroyed. After A calmed down, he asked Racky, so before our little distraction, I was going to remind Naruto-san to stay out of trouble, do you think that will happen? Racky stopped laughing, thought for a moment before responding in a blank voice, enjoy how small the paperwork is with Yujito, before his shun shined away. Aside, this year is going to be very troublesome, he thought, but with the benefits, I would be a fool not to take it. Early in the morning screams could be heard throughout Kumogakure. The entire Minoru compound was painted a mix of bright orange and purple. Nothing was spared, the walls, the roofs, even the furniture, everything inside and outside the compound was either orange or purple. This was not as bad compared to the situations of Yuriko and Naoki. Both were tied to a pole in the center of the village plaza. On Naoki, the word team was written on every visible part of his body, with the same being for Yuriko, except it was shofu with a 2 every once in a while. On a small cliff, overwatching the entire spectacle, were Yujito and Naruto, sitting on a small bench. Yujito had a pack of sushi and Naruto a bowl of ramen, which they were eating with large grins. I have to say, Yujito said as she popped a sushi roll into her mouth, when you first told me of your idea, I was considering taking you to the war. Naruto shot her a masked grin, yes, but if you hadn't come along, you wouldn't have been able to see this masterpiece, he said as he spread his arms to the mass destruction that they had caused. How did you get past the dogs? Asked Yujito, most of the time if they even smell me they go ballistic. Naruto just reached into his pouch and pulled out a small bone that he tossed to Yujito, take a sniff, he said as he got back to eating his ramen. Yujito smelled the bone before confusion spread across her face. Bacon? She asked incredulously. Naruto just waved it off as he finished his ramen. When he was done he nodded, never liked to hurt animals, so I just reward them with something so I can just get on with whatever I'm doing. Yujito nodded and made a mental note to get some of the bones for the future. So why did you need me? She asked, I'm pretty sure you could have done this on your own, so why did you want my help? Naruto stopped and looked at Yujito. 1. He held up a finger, I knew you wanted to get back at them as well. 2. More hands equal next work. And 3. I didn't really know where they lived, he finished with a smaller voice. Yujito gave a slight glare at the boy, so I was just free labor for you, is that it? She asked, intensifying her glare, making Naruto sweat a bit. No, he said in mock surrender, those were just some of the reasons I needed you here, but I brought you along because I like your company. Yujito's glare ceased that instant and she started to lightly blush. Oh look kitten, he likes your company, why don't you him to your room to make him appreciate it even more, tempted Nibi. But Yujito did not want to ruin this moment, so she cut off her connection with her Biju. Thanks, she said, with a little blush present. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he was in the clear, before he gave a chuckle, no problem Yujito. Naruto. The duo turned to see a fuming Rackage staring straight at them. "I think this is a good time to run," said Yujito, to which Naruto quickly nodded. They then jumped down the cliff and ran with the wreckage close behind. The morning was peaceful in Kumo. The sun was rising majestically from the far-off mountains, the citizens were just opening their shops, and Naruto was sleeping peacefully in his bed, without a care in the wake-up. Naruto was flipped out of his mattress and flung at the wall. Senses wide awake, he frantically searched the room for his attacker, only to come across Yujito with a displeased look on her face. "Damn, you wore your mask to sleep," she said as she placed her hands on her hips and looked at the ground, "and when you hit the wall, it didn't fall off." She then shrugged it off and replaced her previous expression with a happier one. "Well, there is always tomorrow. I'll be making me some breakfast," she finished with glee and walked out. As soon as she left, Naruto let out a heavy sigh. Ever since she learned that they were basically neighbors and that they both lived alone, she would every so often break into his apartment and surprise him, whether it was with a new prank idea or another attempt to see what he looked like under his mask. Naruto stumbled to the shower and let the warm water wash away the memory of his previous wake-up call. He had been in Kumo for about a year and had accomplished a total of 2 things. The first was in his training with Karabi, when he had managed to master up to his two-tailed state before he went berserk. That had ruined a great deal of training grounds, Naruto thought to himself as he recounted the angry face of the Raikage after the 6th field had been destroyed. The second thing that he had done while here was create some strong bonds with his friends and classmates. Excluding 2, of course, he added in as he thought of Naoki and Yuriko, who had never really forgiven him for writing team and shofu all over them. But he wasn't complaining, that was one of the funniest things he had done in a while. Naruto was on a lot better terms with the rest of the class though, they enjoyed his pranks, but knew that he was reliable when they needed it, especially when he had gotten a hold of the answer key for the semester test. Some of the girls had even started a club to see what he looked like under his mask, to which Yujito said, "There is no way in hell they are seeing it before me." But the people Naruto mainly hung out with were Yujito, Samui, Amoy, Kari, and Aya. He and Amoy would normally spar with each other. But for some reason, during some of their spars Naruto felt like he was being watched. It felt creepy. With Aya he had officially gotten banned from the kitchen because of an incident when he had tried to combine all of the different ramen flavors into one magnificent bowl. To make a long story short, it exploded. Guess that means that man was not meant to have something that delicious. He and Kyuubi were in a small depression for about a week. Kari and Samui would normally relax with Naruto when they could. Kari's family owned a clothing store, so she worked there half-time, and since Samui needed the cash, she helped out when she could. But when they were off work, they would spend most of their time at the training grounds or someone's house, generally Naruto's because no one else could interrupt. Naruto and Yujito were the new pranksters of the village. People even called them Orenji to Murasaki no Kyofu for how both orange and purple seemed to play a big part in their conjoined pranks. Naruto probably hung out with Yujito more than the rest, partly because she lived so close and also how much they could relate. Yujito had confided in Naruto that when she was little she did have a mother, but she was always sick and died when she was about 5. She was then moved to Kumo and taken under the care of Karabi and A. After Yujito was finished, Naruto decided to tell her a modified version of his life. He told her of how he was an orphan from birth and that the villagers did not like him very much. He left out most of the worst beatings and then told her how a man helped him escape, taught him some ninjutsu, then came to Kumo. When he was done, Yujito had tears of understanding in her eyes and hugged Naruto for close to half an hour. After Naruto was done with his shower, he got dressed and entered the kitchen to see Yujito eating a pack of sushi. Naruto nodded to her and moved to grab 5 cups of instant ramen. Yujito sighed at her fellow blonde, "You know it is not healthy to just eat ramen morning, noon, and night. You need a more balanced diet," she said as she popped a sushi roll into her mouth. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "This is a balanced diet," he said as he showed her one of the cups. "This one has vegetables in it." Yujito knocked the cup away from her. "That's not good enough," she said as she took another bite of her sushi. "You need to eat more variety." Naruto just rolled his eyes. This from the girl who can eat over 4 pounds of sushi in a day. He added in a sarcastically. Yujito pouted. "Fish is good for you," she said, making Naruto laugh. "Not if it is the only thing you eat," he laughed. Yujito just stuck her tongue out at him and went back to her meal. Both ate in a pleasant silence for a bit until Yujito asked, "Who do you think is going to be on your team?" Naruto stopped eating and adopted a quizzical expression. "I don't really know," he said as he looked at his ramen. "I was in the middle of the class, so I could be paired up with anyone, perhaps. Amoy and Kari's families have been paired together before, so they will be on the same team, but as for you, Samui, and me, I am stumped." Yujito looked down a bit. "What if they see me as the demon bitch?" she asked in a small voice. Naruto grabbed Yujito's chin and forced her to look him in the eye. "Then I will find them, shave off all of the hair on their bodies, and hang them upside down from the Raikage's tower," he said with a comforting voice. Yujito giggled at the threat and smiled back. "Thanks, Naruto," she said as she got up from the table. "Come on, let's go and find out our teams," she said, then turned around with a smirk. "I want to see your face when you get paired with one of your fangirls." She ran out of the room with Naruto in a panic state. "That is not funny." He yelled after her, only praying that she was wrong and no fangirls would be placed on his team. They both arrived a few minutes before class was going to start and grabbed some seats near Samui, Carrie, and Amoy. "Did it work?" Carrie asked Yujito, who shook her head in defeat. Carrie kicked her desk. "Damn it. We have to try something else." "Have you tried getting it off while he is sleeping?" she asked. Yujito went into a thinking pose. "No, I don't think that would work. We have to do it when he is awake and he is not suspecting anything," she said. Naruto's sweat dropped from the conversation. "Don't you think it might be a good idea to not plot right in front of me?" he offered. Both girls looked at him, then each other, and nodded, planning on picking up the conversation later. Yujito then turned to Samui. "Come on, Samui-chan. You have seen his face. Just tell us a small detail, hell, even a vague one, please," she begged. Samui just looked away. "No, I promised Naruto I would not tell," she said sternly. Yujito pouted. "Fine, just take your boyfriend's side," she said. Samui gave her a light bop on the head, but if you looked closely, you could see a faint blush. Just then Osamu walked into the class. "Alright, sit down and shut up," he yelled to silence the class. When he thought he had everyone's attention, he began his speech. "Today you start your lives as part of the shinobi force of Kumo. You will be separated into teams depending on your specialties, and then those teams will be given a primary goal, such as information gathering, tracking, capture, assault and so on. Though you will be focusing on honing your skills in whatever job type you have been selected for, you will be expected to have proficient fighting skills for when you need them. The higher up jobs are mostly assassinations, so you better get used to killing." Osamu then picked up a clipboard from his desk. "Team 12, that focuses on information gathering, is made up of Akihiko Fumio, Masaya Yumi, and Susumu Ken. You will meet your sensei at training ground 4. Naruto tuned out for most of the teams, waiting for his name to be called. Samui, Amoy, and Carrie were put on an assault team, and Naoki and Yuriko were put on their own two-man team because of their political status. Yuriko did not stop squealing with joy. Naruto had almost fallen asleep when he heard his name. Team 33, which focuses on assassination, will be made up of Sho Osamu, Nai Yujito, and Uzumaki Naruto. You will meet your sensei at training ground 16. Naruto shot Yujito thumbs up, to which she replied with a grin. He then looked over at his other teammate, Isamu Sho. He wore a black sweatshirt with grey ninja pants and his hit I-8 sewn onto his right shoulder. His black hair and pale skin made him blend into the crowd of students. Isamu had a bored expression on his face, but his hazel eyes darted around the room, analyzing everything. The kid had done average in everything, but Naruto knew he was faking it. The Sho family made up a large percentage of the village's assassins. Isamu was kind, level-headed, and very smart. He had proved that when he had come up with a fail-safe way to steal the test answers last semester. Yes, he would be a good person to have on the team. After Osamu released the class, Naruto, Yujito, and Isamu began walking to training ground 16. They walked in a pleasant silence as Naruto continued to look over his team. Yujito had begun to grow a figure, but it was only slight and had placed her Kumo hit I-8 around her waist like a belt. Due to Racky's instructions, Naruto had hidden all of his strongest techniques. He walked around with his swords hidden in a storage seal on his palms. Without them he kind of felt naked. He had adorned his hit I-8 loosely around his neck. When the group arrived they noticed a tall, dark-toned man waiting for them. He had white hair that covered his left eye and wore the standard Kumo Jonin attire, with a high collar. He carried a small broadsword on his back and had the kanji for water and lightning tattooed on each arm. "Ah, you are here, that's good." Things were beginning to get dull. He motioned them over to where he was and told them to sit down. "Alright, I guess I will begin," he said as he looked over his students. "My name is Derry. My likes are relaxing, pocky, and nothing breaking. My dislikes are people who are arrogant. And my dream for the future is to serve the Raikage." He then motioned to Sho, who looked at the ground then back up to the group. "My name is Sho Osamu," he said blandly. "My likes are training and family. I don't really dislike anything, except for those who try to harm my family. And my dream for the future is to be a respected clan head." Derry nodded, then pointed at Yujito. "Okay, now you're up, purple," he said lazily. Yujito gave a grin. "My name is Nai Yujito. My likes are sushi, friends, pranks, and training. My dislikes are arrogant bastards who act like they are better than everyone else, and that sushi goes bad if you leave it out for a while. My dream is to be a powerful protector of Kumo," she said. Derry gave a small smile and then moved over to Naruto. "Alright, and blonde number 2, he said. Naruto shrugged. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My likes are ramen, my precious people, training, and pranks. My dislikes are people who treat others badly for something out of their control, and the 3 minutes it takes to make ramen." My dream is to protect Kumo and my precious people, he finished with an eye smile. Derry gave another smile at Naruto. But then Isamu interrupted with something. I am afraid you are forgetting something, Naruto-san, he said lazily. Naruto rose an eyebrow at him, and that is? He asked. Isamu sighed, you haven't shown anyone your face. If we were on a mission and someone was impersonating you, it could be a failsafe to ensure it was really you, he explained. Oh, Naruto said as he paled a bit, so that means I have to show you all right now. Isamu and Derry nodded, it does sound like the best option. And also everyone on the team knowing what you look like under your mask would ensure team bonding, Derry added. Vegito was now bouncing with joy and anticipation. This is it, Nibi. All of our hard work will finally pay off. She thought to her charge. I know kitten, I can hardly wait. And of all the days not to bring a camera. Said Nibi, who was looking at Naruto intently. So what are you waiting for? Take off that mask and show the world. Yelled Yujito, getting in closer to have a better view. Naruto narrowed his eyes a bit, you are enjoying this, aren't you? He asked, to which Yujito grinned and nodded. Seeing that he was not getting out of this, he sighed, alright, fine he said, and begun to remove his mask. When he took it off, Derry shrugged, whisker marks, who knew he said. Isamu looked confused, why would you want to hide your face? I see nothing wrong with he stopped when he saw Yujito looking slack-jawed at Naruto. There was a 3-second pause before she disappeared and reappeared right next to Naruto, glumping the life out of him, kawaii. These are adorable. Why didn't you let me see them earlier? Inside her, Nibi was doing no better. I knew we had hit the jackpot with this kid. Understanding, kind, and now we can add on hot. When you are done choking him, drag him back to your room and tie him up. So we can see his whiskers every day. She yelled from her cage. When Derry finally managed to pry Yujito away from Naruto, Isamu spoke up, I now understand why you wore a mask. Naruto just nodded at him, trying to regain his breath. After Naruto had replaced his mask, Derry continued, alright, continuing on from where we got off track, training ground 16 will be where we will do missions from 9 to 12, then training exercises until 16:33 nodded, alright Derry added, now I want all of you to go home and rest up for Tomer, he was interrupted by a puff of smoke. As the smoke cleared, it revealed Racky, the Kitsune Senin. Hit. He yelled, before running up and grabbing Naruto, I just heard that the bastard Takashi and Chiyasa used their political influence to get their two brats on a two-man squad. Do you know what that means? Emphasizing each word with a shake. Meanwhile, Yujito was slack-jawed and Isamu and Derry were wide-eyed. Araki-sama, what are you doing here? Asked Derry, who was still confused about why one of the legendary Senin of Kumo was shaking his student. Racky turned his head to Derry, oh, I didn't know you would still be here, he said, voicing his surprise. He then turned to Yujito, you're the kid who humiliated Takashi teams and Chiasa's apprentice, right? He asked. Yujito shyly nodded her head. Racky stared at Yujito for a moment before he nodded, nice job, he said, before turning back to Naruto. Well now, kid, looks like you blew my cover, said Racky, who shook his head, I am so disappointed. Regaining his balance, Naruto glared at Racky, what do you mean I blew it? You were the one who randomly appeared here and started yelling about it, Iro Masuda. Racky glared at his student, I told you to stop calling me that, and I think we are forgetting who is at fault here, he continued. Yeah, you. Yelled Naruto. Yujito, Isamu, and Derry were completely confused with what had happened in the last couple of minutes. Racky, one of the Senin, had arrived and started yelling at Naruto, who was yelling back with equal vigor, even going so far as to call him Iro Masuda. Alright, can someone please explain what is going on? Yujito asked as she pinched the bridge of her nose. Racky turned to her, well that could easily be explained by Naruto, he said as he pushed his apprentice forward. Well you see, I remember when you said that only the Akami and Nico Senin had apprentices. You were kind of wrong, Naruto stuttered as he rubbed the back of his neck, eyes frantically darted around the training ground, looking for a place to hide if need be. Yujito's eyes widened with realization, you are the Kitsune Senin's apprentice, she said quietly. Naruto nodded, since I was 6, he added. There was silence for a few moments before Yujito punched Naruto square in the face. He was knocked to the ground and looked up in fear of seeing Yujito in rage. You knew all this time and didn't tell me. She yelled as tried to smash his face again. Naruto rolled out of the way and started to back away. Now Yugi-chan, listen, he said as he raised his hands in surrender. I don't want to listen. She yelled and took out a couple of kunai and aimed them at his neck. Naruto ducked and hid behind a training post. Please have mercy, he said meekly. Yujito smiled darkly, sorry, all out, and proceeded to chase Naruto around the grounds with a variety of sharp and heavy objects. From the sidelines, Isamu was shaking his head at his teammates. Well, at least there will never be a dull moment, he said, as he watched Yujito using Naruto as a punching bag. Racky looked at the boy curiously, you don't seem that surprised, he said. Isamu just shrugged, I always knew Naruto was a bit different. If you told me now that he was the Raikage's long-lost son, I could see it, he said as he took a seat on the dirt. Barry then looked at Racky. Since he is an apprentice, he said with his eyebrow raised, what can he do? Racky just smirked at him, now where would be the fun in that? I'll give you some hints, but the rest you will have to find out. He can summon, is skilled at a complex shinobi art, and has something similar to your Kuroi Kaminara, but the rest you will have to get from him. Barry's visible eye rose a bit on the last hint, but he kept his mouth shut. Racky then turned to the scuttle happening between Naruto and Yujito. Hey kid, when you are done playing with your girlfriend, tell them the complications of knowing this secret, he yelled, only to have to dodge a swarm of shuriken. Oh, she has a temper, this is going to be fun for you, Derry, he said with a grin, before using the shunshin and disappearing. After Yujito was through with Naruto, he explained why he and Racky had kept his apprenticeship a secret, going into how he had traveled with Racky since he was 6 and had not stayed in a place for more than a month. When he was finished, Isamu was the first to accept it, later by a reluctant Yujito, who said that Naruto would owe her a lot of sushi in the future. Derry watched the scene in pride, seeing how early on his team was building bonds with each other. I think that this is not going to be as dull as I thought, said Derry quietly to himself. But with a two-tailed Jinchuriki, a ramen-loving senin in training, and a trained assassin, when would it be peaceful in the village again? He then told the group to meet him here at 9 o'clock the next morning to start missions. When Naruto got home that night, he was beat. Most of the wounds Yujito had inflicted were healed, but were still sore. He winced as he fell into his bed. Kid, that was the most entertaining thing I have seen in a long time, said Kyuubi from his cage. Seeing you get your ass whooped by that cat's container was funny as shit. And why are you laughing? Naruto thought back, last time I checked, you felt what I felt, so why aren't you hurting? The fox snorted from his cage, Kid, you getting hurt is minuscule to what I think pain is, so it doesn't bother me. You getting punched in the stomach by a female's rage feels like a bug bite to me, explained the Kyuubi. Naruto was about to make a comeback, but froze when he sensed a presence at the door. He looked over and saw Yujito standing there with a scowl on her face. You didn't tell me everything, she said, as she walked closer. Racky wouldn't have just picked anyone to teach, there had to be some reason he picked you. Yujito was now standing right in front of him, glaring directly into his eyes. It could be family, but Racky never saw that as extremely important, so that is out, she continued to list off. If you had a bloodline that would make sense, but that would also mean a lot of political trouble getting you here. So tell me. Why? Naruto looked away from her. You don't want to know that, he said quietly, trust me, this is something that you do not want to hear. Bullshit, Yujito said, her voice getting a bit louder, we are on a team Baka. If I don't know something that could be a threat, you are not only putting me at risk, but Samui, Amoy, Kari, Racky, and the entire village. So I will ask again why. Naruto looked down at the ground, the bangs of his hair creating a shadow over his eyes. There was silence for a minute before he spoke. You don't know how lucky you have it, he said curtly. Yujito raised an eyebrow. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. Naruto said again, only louder, I said you don't know how lucky you have it. I have seen the way people look at you, some glare, some scowl, but that is it. You do not know how bad it is for people like us outside of Kumo. People like us. What is that supposed to them? Yujito stopped right there as shock and realization formed on her face. You're a Jinchuriki, she said, barely above a whisper. Naruto nodded, and when he looked up, Yujito took a step back in shock. His normal bright, sapphire, blue eyes, which she thought was one of his best qualities, were dull and expressed powerful feelings of fear, anger, loneliness, and above all, pain. I was born on October 10th in the village of Konohagakure, he started, gathering Yujito's attention. On that night, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked our village, killing hundreds of people, shinobi and civilian alike. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, the Yondaime Hokage used his last resort, the Shiki Fuin, to use the Shinigami to seal half of the beast within himself and the other half inside a newborn baby. Yujito was paying rapt attention now, silently dreading the words to come. The reason the Shiki Fuin is considered a last resort is because it takes the soul of the wielder as payment, continued Naruto, not a speck of emotion in his voice. The Yondaime's last wish was for me to be treated as a hero, but I guess he gave the villagers too much credit. Tears were beginning to fall down Naruto's face as he recounted his life. The council demanded my death immediately after they were informed, but thanks to the help of Sandaime, I survived. But that did not mean that the council and the villagers wouldn't make my life a living hell. They placed me in an orphanage, where I was forced to sleep in the cold and wet basement and was only fed once a week, and even then they were table scraps that I had to eat in a corner. When I got old enough to talk, I asked why and they would reply, demons don't deserve to eat people food, and would slap me in the face. Yujito listened in horror as Naruto told her his past. The children were encouraged to pick on me and beat me up, and if I tried to defend myself, I would be punished severely, Naruto said, as he subconsciously squeezed his pants. When I turned 4, the orphanage kicked me out onto the streets, where I had to dig through the garbage for a meal, and if I was lucky, a small ramen shop would give me a bowl on the house. However, during those times, the mobs started. They would hunt me down and beat me to an inch of death before the Anbu would come to disperse the crowd and then leave as quickly as they had come. I was left to heal myself most of the time. Sometimes an Inu-faced Anbu would take me to the hospital, but it was always a 50-50 chance if I would get treated or not. That was the case when on my birthday, I was beaten so badly that I was in a coma for about 2 days. When I awoke to find the Sandane watching me, I told him about my life on the streets, and he was furious. He then gave me my own apartment, which I lived in for barely a year. Vegito was both disgusted and horrified with what these monsters had done to a child and deeply wanted to make them pay. On my 6th birthday, I was hiding out in my apartment. I had learned early on that on my birthday, the beatings were the worst. Said Naruto, who was looking at the floor again, slightly shivering. It was then when a mob broke into my house, chased me into a dark alley, and proceeded to give me the worst beating of my life. Naruto looked to stare right at Yujito. I was stabbed, cut, my ribs were broken, and to top it all off, some ninja in the group used some Kaiten jutsus on me, giving me second-degree burns all over my body. I was then moved out of the village and crucified to a stake in the middle of the forest, left to die. Finally a small smile graced Naruto's lips. That was when I met Racky. He had been traveling through the outskirts of Konoha and had smelled my blood. He took me away from the village and offered to teach me. I accepted because he told me the reason I was hated and I was unsure if I wanted to protect those people. He finished and then gave a dry chuckle. I am sorry, I am sure you didn't want to know that. In an instant Yujito was pulling him into a hug and was sobbing her eyes out. Naruto was confused but slowly relaxed into it. They stayed like that for a while. Naruto didn't know, he just stayed there, silent, waiting for Yujito to finish. When she did look up, her eyes were puffy red. How can you still smile, with everything that has happened to you? She asked. She had never seen Naruto with less than a smile on his face and had never seen him cry. Naruto gave her a smile. I never gave up, he said simply. I would never let their words get to me, and if they did, I always had a friend nearby to knock me on the head to get my senses back together. He then looked up at the ceiling. To tell you the truth, I have never told anyone this in that detail. I always kept the worst parts to myself, so no one would have to pity me. But with you it was different. Vegito gave a dry laugh and whipped the tears from her eyes. That's because we are friends, Baka, and them hurting you is just like them hurting me, she said as she put her hand in front of him. If you ever see one of those bastards again, I will be there to help you kick their asses back to hell. What do you say? Naruto gave her a foxy grin. Great, Yugi-chan, great, he said as he grabbed the offered hand. Yujito grinned back and walked to the door. I'll see you tomorrow for missions, she said with a wave. Yujito, Naruto said, making her turn back to see a serious expression on his face. This is considered an SS rank secret, so you cannot tell anybody about it. Understand? Yujito nodded and exited the apartment. A smile played on Naruto's lips. Thanks for understanding, Yugi-chan, he said to himself before he let exhausted but blissful sleep claim him. Yujito had just entered her apartment when she heard a feminine yawn coming from her head. Her apartment was very similar to Naruto's, except it had more pictures around the place, was a bit dirtier, and the smell of fish was ever present. You were sleeping the whole time, she asked the cat demon, which was doing some stretches. Of course, kitten, said Nibi, you went to hurt the blonde, and I had already seen that this morning. So there was no real need for me to watch. Yujito sighed, well, I didn't kick his ass, he had a perfectly good reason for not telling anybody, she thought as she prepared for bed. Oh, and what might that be? Nibi said, getting interested. He's a Jinchuriki like me, said Yujito as she walked out of the bathroom. Oh, well, that makes sense, he did always heal from injuries fast, and he has that ungodly stamina, but who does he contain? It should be he is a little coward who won't let anyone near his container. Me, that's obvious. The Sanbi doesn't really do well with heights. Yanbi maybe. Go be so polite that you would rip your own ears off, so no. Rakubi you. Nanabi such a bitch, I would like to claw her eyes out. Were any of these on target? Vegito shook her head, nope, all wrong. He contains the Kyuubi no Yoko, she said, but was not expecting the reaction from her container. Kyu-kun is here. She yelled, causing Yujito to jump. What are you waiting for, kitten, go and claim him right now. I have waited far too long to be denied him when he is so close. Yujito sighed, good night, Nibi, she thought, and laid in her bed. What are you doing, kitten? You should not be sleeping, that should be exactly the opposite of what you should be doing tonight. Go back into his room and claim him. Get down on your knees and suck his. Yujito shut her connection to Nibi and enjoyed the blisses of sleep while Nibi ranted about the stuff she should be doing to Naruto. Barry sighed as he looked down at their targets, happily drinking in the bandit main camp, unaware that this would be their last night among the living. Though Derry looked calm, inside he was a bit worried. This was Team 33's first C-ranked mission, and it would also be the first time for most of them to experience the feeling of taking another man's life. Barry had wanted to keep them on D ranks for a while, sure every shinobi knew of the horrors of D ranks, the meaningless tasks such as weeding, babysitting, and finding lost pets, but their main purpose was to ease new genin into a lifestyle of constant missions. But knowing this, Derry also knew his team was far from normal. Due to the incident last month with the discovery of Naruto's apprenticeship, he had gone to the Rackage to find out any other information he should know about his new genin. The Rackage had seen fit to tell him about Naruto's Jinchuriki status and his relationship with Konoha. Barry wanted to ask the specifics of the relationship, but from the grim look the Rackage had had on during the meeting, he could tell that it was best not to pry. After the awkward team introduction the day before, his 3 students had seemed changed. Naruto had taken to removing his mask during training, saying that if they were a team, he would let them know that he trusts them. Yujito was also a lot calmer, focusing on mastering the few Kaiten techniques that she knew, but her gaze also seemed to be drawn towards Naruto when he wasn't looking. Isamu, who from the report at the academy was very reserved and rarely spoke, tried to be more open with his teammates, every so often showing off a portion of emotion that his family was trained from birth to keep under control. However, it showed the most when Yujito had thrown a fireball at him for pointing out that she was staring at Naruto. So far his team was working together flawlessly, not a single mission had failed and, except for some minor goof-offs, was done in the quickest way possible. Barry had also been silently evaluating the strengths and weaknesses each member had, both as a ninja and personally. As a team overall, he could easily see why Rackage had made them an assassination specialist squad. Naruto, Yujito, and Isamu were highly skilled in stealth, being able to sneak in and out of buildings almost undetected. Pushing those thoughts away, Derry grabbed his headset, positions. He whispered into the microphone. There was silence before he heard a response. Shadow in position, said a low, crackling voice. Moments later, 2 more voices were heard, Fox Cat in position, said Naruto and Yujito at the same time. Barry nodded, alright Shadow, proceed with plan A Cat, get in as close as you can and wait for the signal. And Fox, create the diversion and sneak in for the kill, said Derry, who was rewarded with a chorus of hi, sensei. The leader of the bandits took another swig of sake as he looked around his camp. Most of his men were out patrolling the area, so it was highly unlikely that he and the few men he had left as guards would be disturbed. He looked around at all of the equipment and entertainment they had acquired in the last town. The people that lived there were weak and too scared to try and stop them. But though the men were weak, the women were beautiful. The man smirked as he looked at his greatest prize. Lying in the corner was Nobuko Mi, daughter of the village mayor. She was tied to a pole, with a rag in her mouth, along with the other women they had kidnapped from the village. Her clothes were stripped and her body was covered with semen and other bodily fluids. Her eyes were red with dried tears. He decided that he wanted to have fun with his girl and moved in a drunken stumble to the whimpering woman. He roughly pulled her towards his face and gave a long lick down her neck. Mi's eyes opened and widened in fear as she realized what was happening to her. The bandit leader gave her a lustful grin, but before he could continue, a rustling was heard in the bushes. The 3 men instantly stiffened. The 2 guards grabbed their swords and the leader pushed the girl to the ground. They moved in quietly, weapons raised and eyes hardened. Just then a small red fox poked its head out. The men relaxed and one even lowered his sword. It was then when the fox grinned and disappeared in a puff of smoke. As soon the little fox disappeared, the group knew that there was trouble. 3 kunai embedded themselves in the ground at their feet. The guards looked up to see a young girl dressed in purple coming right at them. The guard on the left reacted the fastest by swiping his sword across the girl's stomach. Instead of falling to the ground, her skin light up with electricity, sending a strong electrical current down the blade of the sword, shocking the guard. He fell to his knees as he screamed in pain, before blacking out. The girl looked at the other thieves, before dispersing in a shower of lightning. The 2 other bandits tried to run from the scene, back to the camp, but were met with another rain of kunai. The leader remained unharmed, but the same could not be said for his companion, whose body was now littered with the throwing knives. The bandit leader knew what was happening. These were no mere mercenaries, these were shinobi, trained to kill from a young age, and weapons for the highest buyer. The mayor had probably hired them to save his daughter, but he was not going to let them have the satisfaction of going home unscathed. He quickly stumbled to his feet and drew his sword. Mi was looking at him with utter terror in her eyes, begging him not to do what he was thinking. Die bitch. He yelled as he charged the defenseless girl. Mi closed her eyes, silently saying goodbye to all of her friends and loved ones, and waited for the pain. She waited, no pain, she waited for a bit longer, but still felt no pain. Gathering her courage, she slowly opened up her eyes and was met with the bandit captain on the ground, bleeding profusely from the jugular and lung. In front of her was a boy no older than maybe 13 or 14, wearing a white sweatshirt with clouds on the top half. She could tell that he was taking deep breaths by the way his body rose and fell. Mii wondered why until she saw a bloody kunai in each hand. Naruto had been in the trees not so far off from the camp. The plan had gone off perfectly, that was at the beginning of course. The mayor of a small village in Yu had asked them to take care of some renegades that were terrorizing the village and also save his daughter and the rest of the captured women. This was the first C-rank mission of Team 33 and he was relieved that they got to do one mission that didn't involve finding any lost pets. Barry had taken care of the bandits patrolling the area rather quickly and then had said that taking out the last 3 would be great training for them. Naruto had summoned a small fox to lure the 3 thugs from their encampment and when it disappeared, a Raiden Bushin of Yujido had attacked them directly, purposely getting hit with their metal swords so it could send some powerful shocks to their enemies while the real Yujido went and freed the women in the cages. Isamu stayed in the trees, waiting for the right moment when the other 2 started to run. As soon as they did, he used a cage kunai no jutsu to finish them off. What they did not expect was for the thief leader to survive and charge the mayor's daughter with the intent to kill. Naruto knew he had to act fast. He jumped from his hiding place and pulled 2 kunai from his pouch. Sprinting towards the man, as soon as he was close enough, he made for a slice with his left hand, cutting the leader's jugular in half. Naruto then stabbed his other hand into the man's left lung, embedding the blade deep into skin before kicking the carcass away. As Naruto took a couple of breaths to calm down, he realized what he had done. He had killed the man in cold blood and then after he had died, he had continued to stab to make sure he was dead. In truth, the leader had died the moment his jugular was cut, letting loose a torrent of his blood pour out. He was already dead when Naruto stabbed him in the lung and he was already dead when he hit the ground and he kicked him. Naruto turned around to look at the woman he had just saved. The girl looked to be around 15 or 16, with brown hair that currently looked wild and sticky. She had green eyes that stared directly at him that were red and puffy. As he looked down, he blushed crimson, seeing that she was completely naked. He quickly looked around the campsite until his eyes fell upon a blanket. He grabbed it and draped it around the shivering girl. He gave her a small smile. "Hey, it's okay. You are safe now, your father sent us to find you. He has been very worried," he said in a soft voice. Naruto untied her hands and then removed the rag in her mouth. There was silence for a moment before the girl embraced him and started to sob into his shoulder. Not having much experience with this, he just patted her on the back, whispering soothing words to her and sending a pleading look to his teammates and sensei, who had arrived moments earlier with confusion written on their faces. After they had gotten Mii to calm down, they began escorting the women back to their homes. Mii though, refused to let go of Naruto, much less let him out of her sight. Most of the team felt fine with this, except for Yujido, who kept shooting death glares when she was not looking or when Mii moved in closer to Naruto. When they arrived back at the village, the women ran to their husbands or loved ones, while Mii ran to her father, who was smiling with joy. After the greetings were through, the mayor gave Derry a small scroll, saying that a hawk had arrived with it while they were gone. He also invited them to stay a night at his mansion before they headed back to Kumo. That night before dinner, Derry called his team into the living room for a team meeting. "First off, I want to tell you that you all did excellently on your first C-rank mission. But suffice it to say, we are not going home just yet," he said as his students looked at him curiously. "I just got a message from Raikage-sama, a C-ranked mission has just come in from Nami and since we are the closest, he wants us to go and complete it," he continued. "Why are we going there?" asked Yujido. "I have always heard that Nami was a poor country and I have never heard of our shinobi doing missions there." Isamu nodded. "It is quite odd, Nami mostly sends their mission requests to Konoha or Mist. So if they are sending us one, they are in serious need. Which brings up the question of why only a C rank," he said as he looked at his sensei for clarification. Barry nodded. "Very good, Isamu. Yes, Nami has mostly done business with Konoha and it is a poor country, but the only reason they are poor is because trade cannot get to the mainlands by anything but boat," he said as he laid a map on the floor. "Our client is building a bridge connecting the mainland to Nami. If that happens, Nami's economy will skyrocket. We are assigned to protect him from bandits that may try to stop him." Derry pointed out the island on the map before rolling it up. "Any questions?" "You are forgetting one key detail, sensei," said Naruto. His eyes were now glued to the floor. "The only way to get to Nami is to go through Hai no Kuni," he said. Yujido and Isamu widened their eyes. How could they forget that Nami was off the coast of Hai no Kuni? Naruto returning to that land would not only cause a great deal of trouble for their squad, but also for Naruto mentally. Barry looked straight at Naruto. "I know," he said, making Naruto's head shoot up. "It is partly the reason that we have been chosen to go. with a chance that we might encounter some Konoha shinobi. If they attack, you will know the most about the clans inside the village and might be able to link the attackers with their clans. This will give us not only information on the hidden village, but an idea of how to beat them. Naruto still looked unsure, so Dari's gaze softened before pointing to the hit I ate around his neck. "This marks you as a shinobi of Kumo," he said, catching his student's attention. "Though you have had citizenship in Konoha, you also had traveling rights and could leave the village if you pleased. But now that you are one of our shinobi, you have citizenship in Kumo and are part of our military, so if they try to take you back, it is an act of war." Naruto looked at his own hit I ate, tracing his finger along the engraving of the Kumo symbol. He looked up at his teacher with determination and a grin. "Let's do it, sensei," he said loudly, causing Yujito to grin as well, and Dari and Isamu to have a small smile. "Now that is settled," said Dari as he moved towards the dining room, "dinner is almost ready." The mayor had spared no expense in the meal. It was a buffet of foods from all around you, and just for Naruto, there was a large bowl of ramen. Mi, who looked a lot better than when they found her, spent the night talking with Naruto, which only seemed to annoy Yujito more. When they left in the morning for a small port town in U, Mi had given Naruto a light peck on the lips as a goodbye. Isamu had to keep Yujito from tearing her to shreds. Nibi wasn't doing much better, as she kept screaming at the harlot who was taking her Kaioken. As the team ran towards the Nami, Yujito's eyes began to wander to Naruto. After she had learned of his status, she had forgiven him, but not before he did some things for her. The first was that she got a couple of pictures of him without his mask. She spent hours teasing his fan club, giving them brief flashes of the photos before turning away. The second thing was that he had to promise that he would not wear his mask outside of the village. She had discovered that it was his weak point. If she rubbed his whiskers, he would instantly calm down and do whatever she said. The final wish was that he had to pay for 2 weeks of sushi for Yujito. Naruto had cried when he heard that, saying that he would not be able to afford ramen again for months. "What a sexy ass, not surprising since he is Kaioken's Jinchuriki," said Nibi. Yujito sighed. Ever since Nibi had learned that the Kyuubi was sealed inside Naruto, her perverted comments were even dirtier than before. She had even had to excuse herself when Nibi's ideas got to her. "Will you knock it off, Nibi, you are such a pervert," thought Yujito to the demon. "Oh ho, I'm the perv. Remember kitten, I see what you see, so if I am the perv, why are you staring at his ass?" said Nibi, a lecherous grin on her face. Yujito tried to respond, but the blush growing on her face was making it hard to think. Shut up, Iro Nico, she thought back. Nibi just laughed. "You know that you should be using this to your advantage. The ramen girl is always at the shop, Samui is on another team, you are the only one that he understands," she said. Yujito snorted. "I don't like him like that, Nibi," she thought back to the Hellcat. "Oh, you can't lie to me, kitten, I have seen those dreams you have about him. Very kinky, even by my standards," Nibi said, before giggling pervertedly. Yujito lit up completely red and tried to stutter a retort but came up with nothing. Naruto looked over at Yujito, who was red as a tomato. "Are you okay?" he asked. She instantly stiffened, stuttered a no, then made some distance between them. Naruto gave her a confused look but left her to her thoughts and the giant perverted Nico. Naruto had been on edge ever since they had entered Hai no Kuni. Though they were traveling on the coast, Konoha was still a good distance away and they kept most of their anbu around the village and had small guard towers all around the country. Dari's words had comforted him a bit. Besides, what were the chances that he would meet any Konoha shinobi and Nami? On a path outside of the village, Kakashi felt the need to sneeze. He was on his team's first C-rank mission. He looked at the members of Team 7. Uchiha Sasuke, Rookie of the Year and the last of the Uchiha, and the reason he had a team in the first place. After the Uchiha massacre, the village and the village council saw it fit to have the only jonin with a developed Sharingan to train the boy. Sasuke had spiky black hair and black, soulless eyes, like all Uchiha. He had a blue shirt with the collar up, white shorts, wide arm protectors going down each arm, and his hit I-8 displayed on his forehead. He was currently brooding, ignoring the incessant chatter of his two teammates. Sakura Haruno was a very smart girl, it was because of that she was the top kunoichi of her class, rather than for fighting skills. She had long pink hair that ran down her back, bright green eyes, and a noticeable forehead. She wore a red kippao dress and her hit I-8 atop her head. She was currently going on about how great her Sasuke-kun was and was berating their temporary member, Kiba. Kiba in Yuzuka was very similar to his clan, personality-wise, brash, feral, stubborn, but deathly loyal to his comrades. He was officially part of Team 8, with Kurenai as his sensei, but she had lent him to Kakashi, provided that he take of him and not turn him into a pervert. He wore a fur-lined coat, grey pants, and his partner, Akamaru, hidden in his hood. He was currently yelling at Sakura to keep quiet about the emo king. Their current job was to escort an old man, Tazuna, back to his home in Nami and protect him from bandits while he finished building his bridge. The mission seemed a bit odd, but after Sasuke had demanded a higher ranked mission, this was the only thing that he had. Hopefully nothing would go wrong and he would be back in Konoha by next month. He did not know what he had just gotten himself into.